You clicked on a Halloween night in 1890 because you want calm history. You want slow voices. You want old streets and strange beliefs. People in 1890 feared shadows. They watched the moon and whispered to ghosts. They left bread on doorsteps for spirits. They wore masks made from soot and cloth. You think Halloween feels loud today. Back then it felt quiet, secret, and cold. Children walked with lanterns carved from turnips. They begged for coins and bread. Mothers tossed salt at doors to block evil. Fathers carved symbols into barn beams. That night held silence. You will see how it felt. You will hear forgotten stories. You will learn why fires burned in empty fields while neighbors stared at the dark. Stay with me through the quiet. Stay through the night. Night settles over the small town like a lid. The date is October 31st, 1890. You stand at the edge of a narrow lane. Houses hug the road. Roofs drip with cold. Chimneys spit thin smoke. The moon looks pale and sharp. A dog barks once, then stops. Everything feels held in breath. People call this Halloween. Some call it All Hallows Eve. Some fear it. Some love it. Most keep their heads down and move quiet. Old stories say spirits walk tonight. Old stories say you open your door with care. You check every shadow out of the corner of your eye. A boy named Elias steps outside his small brick house. He wears thick wool clothes and a scarf. He carries a turnip lantern with a thin candle inside. The carved face glows weak orange. He looks taller than his 9 years. His father shaved last week, but left a scratchy shadow. His mother packed warm bread into his pocket. She told him to share the bread with anyone who needs it. She also told him to keep salt in his coat. Salt fights evil. That is what she says. Elias walks down the lane with his lantern held high. The street crunches under his boots. Frost forms along the edges of doors. His lantern light bounces off stone walls. He sees shadows stretch and twist. He keeps walking. He looks for his friend Ruth. Ruth waits near the well. She holds her own turnip lantern. Her lantern has round eyes and a crooked mouth. She greets Elias with a quick smile. Her cheeks glow from the cold. She lifts a small basket filled with acorns. Her mother said acorns guard against wandering spirits. Ruth trusts her mother, so the acorns stay close. They start toward the church square. This is where everyone gathers. Some bring food. Some bring firewood. Children bring lanterns. Teens tell scary stories. Adults pretend they do not listen, but they do. They want to hear tales of ghosts, witches, and lost souls. At the square, a small bonfire burns. Flames crackle. Sparks fly up toward the sky. A few families stand near the fire. They hold blankets tight. They warm hands over the heat. Someone passes around a jug of cider. Elias and Ruth walk close. The fire feels good on their faces. Elias hands a slice of bread to Ruth. She tears it in half and gives him the bigger piece. Near the church door, an old woman in a black shawl sits on a wooden stool. Her name is Mrs. Pike. Children say she talks to ghosts. Adults say she knows herbs for sickness. Tonight, she watches the flame and mutters words under her breath. Ruth stares at her but does not speak. Elias feels a chill. He turns away and looks at the fire again. A group of older boys laugh at the edge of the square. They hold long sticks and poke snow piles. One boy wears a mask made from cloth and soot. The holes for his eyes look rough. He bumps into Elias and calls him a scared little mouse. Elias steps back. Ruth stands in front of him. She tells the boy to pick on someone else. The boy laughs again and walks off with his friends. The town bell chimes. People fall silent. The church door creaks open. The priest steps outside. He wears thick robes and holds a candle. He wishes everyone a safe night. He says to keep lights burning until sunrise. He blesses the bonfire. He asks the crowd to watch the children. He gives thanks for harvest and bread. When he finishes, he steps back inside. The door closes with a heavy thud. Families, trade stories. A farmer tells of an owl that perched on his barn for 7 nights. He thinks it was a trapped soul. A fisherman says he heard whispers in the fog on his way home. A baker swears his oven lit without tinder this morning. No one laughs. Everyone listens. Elias hears every word. He grips his lantern. He looks at Ruth. She rolls her eyes a little, but her shoulders stay tight. They both know stories hold power tonight. A blind man walks through the square with a thin stick tapping the stones. He stops near the fire. A young girl offers him cider. He thanks her and drinks. He pulls a pouch from his pocket and scatters small white stones on the ground. He says the stones carry blessings. People nod with respect. The blind man steps away into the shadows. A gust of wind slaps the square. Smoke whips sideways. Lantern flames flicker. Ruth shivers. Elias hears something like a whisper near the well. He looks, but sees nothing. The night holds secrets. Dogs bark in the distance. Horses stamp in their stables. A group of mothers gather children for a small game. They tie apple slices to a string and hang them from a stick. Children try to bite the slices without using hands. Elias and Ruth join. Elias gets apple juice on his chin. Ruth bites fast and wins a full apple. She grins. Elias bows to tease her. Laughter softens the night after games. Some families go home. They leave lanterns in windows to push back evil. Others stay near the fire. They sing slow songs. Elias whispers to Ruth about going to Old Lane. Old Lane sits near the fields. Fences run crooked. Trees bend in odd shapes. People say spirits wander there. Ruth thinks for a moment. She nods. They step away from the fire. They pass Mrs. Pike. She looks up at them with pale eyes. She tells them to keep salt in front of their hearts. Elias touches his coat to make sure the small pouch stays there. Ruth taps her basket of acorns. Mrs. Pike smiles, sharp and quick. Elias and Ruth walk down a narrow alley. The air grows colder. The moon hides behind clouds. Their lanterns glow brighter. Old Lane waits ahead. The houses thin out. Stone walls turn into fences. Grass crunches under frost. Trees whip in the wind. Elias hears a soft hoot. An owl flies across the path. Its wings make no sound. Ruth grasps his arm. They keep walking. Old Lane leads to the fields. Farmers cut most crops, but tall stalks of corn still stand in rows near the edge. The wind rattles the dry leaves. The sound feels like bones clicking. The children walk slow. Their lantern light flickers on the stalks. Ruth stops. She points at the ground. Salt lines spread across the earth near a farmhouse. Someone drew symbols in the dirt. Elias kneels. He sees shapes like stars and crossed lines. He remembers his father carving marks into barn beams last year. Protection marks. Ruth whispers that the farmer fears spirits tonight. They stand and listen. A barn door creaks open. A man steps out with a candle. He sees them and calls them near. His voice sounds rough but kind. They walk toward him. He asks why they wander so far. Elias tells him they want to look at the fields. The man shakes his head. He says the night pulls tricks. He points to a bale of hay and asks them to sit. He brings 2 mugs of warm milk. They drink slow. The man tells them about last year when a cold shadow moved across the cornrows. He swears he saw a ghost. Ruth's eyes widen. Elias holds his mug tight. The man says he protected his barn with salt, chalk, and carved marks. He says tonight feels restless again. A cow moans inside the barn. The man stands and walks to the door. He waves Elias and Ruth inside. The barn smells of hay. Cows huddle in stalls. Their breath steams. Candles flicker along the walls. The man says he will check each stall. Elias helps him. Ruth holds her lantern high. 1 cow kicks at the wood. Another moans. Something rattles near the loft. The man climbs a ladder. Elias and Ruth stand still. The barn feels thick with darkness. A shape drops from the loft. It hits the hay. Ruth gasps. Elias steps back. Then the shape groans and moves. A teenager sits up. He looks dazed. He wears a cloth mask. His eyes look guilty. The man pulls the mask off. The boy stares at the ground. He admits he tried to scare people. He hid in the loft waiting for footsteps. The man scolds him but pats his shoulder. The boy leaves. Ashamed, Elias and Ruth breathe easier. The barn feels safe again. The man thanks them for helping. He walks them outside. The sky clears. The moon shines bright. Elias sees frost glint across the roof. Ruth sees her breath in white clouds. They say goodbye and walk back toward the square. The fields behind them rustle. The barn door closes. The wind softens. Their lanterns swing in their hands. The moon lights their path. When they reach the town edge, they see the bonfire glow. People still stand near it. A few children dance around the flame. Elias spots his father near the tavern. His father greets him with a grin and ruffles his hair. Ruth sees her mother talking with Mrs. Pike. She runs over and hugs her tight. Elias tells his father about the barn. His father nods and says he once saw a masked fool try the same trick. He says people fear spirits so much tonight they forget humans make trouble too. Elias agrees. Ruth and her mother walk Elias home. On the way, they pass houses with lanterns glowing in windows. Some doorsteps show lines of salt. Some windows hold little charms of wood and string. A neighbor piles wood near his porch. Another neighbor sprinkles holy water on her gate. Each home holds its own beliefs. When Elias reaches his doorstep, his mother hugs him. She sees frost on his hat. She asks if he saw trouble. He tells her a short version. She laughs and kisses his cheek. His father lifts him inside. Elias crawls into bed. He leaves his turnip lantern on a shelf. The candle burns low. His sister sleeps in the next bed, snoring soft. His parents whisper in the kitchen. The fire pops in the stove outside. The town settles for sleep. The bonfire burns to embers. Mrs. Pike walks home with her shawl wrapped tight. The blind man taps his stick on stones. Dogs curl under porches. Cats stalk through alleys. The moon watches from above. You hear the wind, soft now. You see salt lines across doorsteps. You see lanterns dim to tiny points. Halloween in 1890 floats from life to dream. Dawn creeps over the town with thin light. Frost clings to rooftops. Halloween night ended, but stories cling to every street. People sweep their steps. Smoke rises from chimneys. The church bell rings. You walk the lane again with Elias and Ruth, but today feels quiet. Elias wakes early. His room stays cold. He breathes out white air. His mother lights a small fire. She hands him warm broth. He drinks slow. His sister rubs her eyes and asks about last night. Elias tells her a masked boy tried to scare them. She laughs and asks for a story about ghosts. Elias shakes his head. He says the barn felt safe, even with shadows dancing on walls. Ruth wakes in her own house. Her mother stirs porridge. Ruth sits near the stove. She feels sleepy from the late night. She remembers the bonfire, the old stories, and Mrs. Pike's sharp smile. She remembers the man with warm milk and carved marks on beams. She remembers the blind man scattering white stones. She touches her basket of acorns and feels proud. The town gathers leftover wood and scraps from the square. Some carry burned sticks from the bonfire. Children pick through ashes and find bits of melted wax from candles. They poke the pieces and laugh. The priest steps outside and sweeps the church steps. He nods at families on their way home. Elias and Ruth meet near the well. They walk to the schoolhouse. School stands near the edge of town, behind a row of hedges. The teacher, Miss Alder, unlocks the door. She holds her coat tight. Her nose looks red from cold. She greets children with tired eyes, but gentle words. Inside, desks line the room. A pot-belly stove sits near the back wall. Miss Alder kneels and lights a fire. She blows until sparks catch. Flames spread. The room grows warm. Elias sits near the stove with Ruth. Other children chatter about pumpkins, masks, and strange shapes in the night. Miss Alder claps her hands for silence. She asks each child to share one thing from Halloween. A girl named Clara says her father buried an apple in the yard to feed spirits. A boy named Henry says his mother hung dried herbs above the door. Another boy, Simon, says he saw a white shape near the woods. Miss Alder listens. She takes notes. She tells them old beliefs stay strong because fear stays strong. Miss Alder opens a small book about old customs. She talks about ancient Samhain. She says people long ago lit fires to guard their homes. They left bread for ghosts. They carved faces into vegetables. Elias looks at his turnip lantern. He wonders how many children long ago carved the same shapes. Outside, a thin wind picks up. Clouds gather. Leaves skitter across the yard. Miss Alder sends 2 boys to fetch wood for the stove. They return with logs and stack them near the door. The stove spits, sparks, and hums. After lessons, Ruth asks Miss Alder if she believes in spirits. Miss Alder smiles and says fear helps people share warmth. Fear builds bonds. Whether spirits stand outside or not, love holds people tight. Ruth blinks and nods. Elias and Ruth leave school early. Miss Alder dismisses class when clouds thicken. She fears snow. Elias and Ruth walk toward the market. Vendors pack goods under cloth covers. Fish sellers toss ice over barrels. The butcher hangs slabs of salted meat. A baker sets warm buns on a tray. The smell spreads across the square. Elias asks for a penny bun. The baker breaks one in half and gives both children a piece. He refuses coins. He says Halloween brought good trade. He thanks the children for lighting lanterns near his stall. He says the glow kept thieves away. Elias laughs. Ruth eats her bun with her cheeks puffed. They wander down Stone Street. Houses stand tight. Doors stay open as women sweep out soot. Children draw chalk marks on walls. Some draw turn-up faces. Others draw simple stars. Ruth draws 2 acorns near a window. Elias draws a small owl. They giggle and run before anyone sees. At the end of Stone Street, a tall man in a brown coat stands by a wagon. He sells charms of iron and bone. He says they guard against ghosts, curses, and bad luck. A woman buys a charm shaped like a bird. A man buys one shaped like a cross. Elias and Ruth stare. The charms look strange. Some look carved from animal bones. Some look hammered from old nails. The man calls to Elias and Ruth. He offers them a charm shaped like a tiny hand. He says it guards children on cold nights. Elias touches it. It feels cold and smooth. The man says it costs 1 copper. Elias frowns. He has no coins. Ruth reaches into her pocket and finds a tiny bit of bread. The man laughs and takes the bread. He gives the charm to Elias. Elias feels the small hand in his palm. He thanks the man. They walk past the wagon. Ruth asks if the charm works. Elias says he does not know, but he likes how it feels. He slips it into his coat pocket next to his salt pouch. They reach the fields near Old Lane again. Daylight softens the scar of night. Cornstalks stand still. Frost coats each leaf. A hare darts across the dirt. Crows perch on fence posts. Elias and Ruth walk to the farmhouse. The farmer leans on his shovel. He nods at them. His cows graze on hay inside the barn. He tells them the night passed quiet after they left. He says he heard the masked boy return to help stable the cows. The boy said he acted like a fool and will never hide in the loft again. The farmer laughs. Elias asks about the marks on the ground. The farmer says his father taught him those marks long ago. He says they guard the home and fields. He kneels and draws a fresh mark with his shovel, a cross inside a circle. He sprinkles salt around it. Ruth watches with wide eyes. They help the farmer move hay bales inside. The sun slips behind clouds, casting grey light. The cows snort. A crow caws. Elias grabs his lantern from his bag and lights it. The farmer nods at the glow. He says light holds strength even in daylight. After a while, both children head back to town. They take a different route along the river. Water rolls slow under the stone bridge. Ducks paddle near reeds. Fishermen toss nets and haul in small silver fish. Elias and Ruth sit on the bridge for a moment. They dangle legs and kick at flakes of frost. Ruth stares at her acorns. She asks if Elias wants one. He says yes. She hands him a small one with a smooth cap. Elias slips it into his coat. Now he has salt, a charm, and an acorn. He feels safe. They rise and walk toward the blacksmith's shop. The blacksmith stands outside with thick gloves. He pumps air into the forge. Heat sprays, sparks. Iron glows red. He pounds a horseshoe. The hammer rings loud. People watch from a distance. Elias and Ruth ask if he saw anything strange last night. The blacksmith nods. He says a horse refused to enter the stable until he hung iron charms above the door. After he did, the horse walked in calm. He shows them a charm shaped like a small bent nail. He says iron guards against evil. He drops the charm back into a box. Ruth asks if he believes in spirits. The blacksmith wipes sweat from his brow. He says he believes in fear and comfort. Iron brings comfort. Fear brings trouble. He gives them a bent nail as a gift. They thank him and leave. Afternoon fades. Clouds darken. The wind picks up. People hurry home. Children stop playing and run inside. Doors slam. Ovens light. Wood crackles. Elias and Ruth step toward their houses. At Elias's home, his father stacks wood by the stove. His mother kneads dough for supper. Elias shows them the charm. His mother frowns at the bone shape, but smiles at the kindness of the deal. His father pats his head. He says, salt and strong hearts beat any spirit. Ruth reaches home. Her mother stirs a pot of cabbage and pork. Ruth shares the rest of her bun. They laugh about the boy in the barn. Ruth's father marks the doorpost with chalk. He says tonight might hold leftover trouble from Halloween. Ruth rolls her eyes, but smiles. Night falls fast. The town dims. A few lanterns burn in windows. Some houses place salt lines on doorsteps again. Others leave small bowls of milk outside for wandering souls. Owls hoot from trees. Dogs grow restless. Elias lies in bed. He holds the tiny hand charm in his palm. He feels tired. He hears the wind. He hears his father's low voice. He hears his sister breathing. The charm warms in his hand as his body relaxes. He drifts to sleep. Ruth curls under her quilt. She holds her basket of acorns near her feet. She hears her mother whisper a short prayer. Her father snores. The stove crackles. Ruth closes her eyes. She thinks of the barn, the farmer, and the safe cows. Outside, the town settles again. The priest walks past houses with a small candle. He prays for safety. Mrs. Pike steps out of her home. She sprinkles herbs into the wind. The blind man taps his stick across the stones. He hums a slow tune. The moon rises above rooftops. Frost spreads across windows. The river whispers. The town sleeps. Halloween ended, but the night still holds secrets from old worlds. Morning arrives with pale sun. The frost lingers on every stone and rooftop. A thin mist drifts across the river. Birds stay quiet. The town moves slow, as if night still presses on every door. You walk with Elias and Ruth again. Their breath hangs white. Their boots crunch on frozen mud. Elias steps outside holding his coat tight. His mother hands him a slice of warm bread with honey. He eats while watching the lane. Neighbors brush thin snow from their steps. The butcher's dog shakes frost from its fur. A cat darts under a wagon. Elias's father cuts wood in the yard. Each swing of the axe echoes down the street. Ruth meets Elias near the well. She brings her basket, smaller now, but still holding acorns. She says she heard whistles in the night. She says someone walked past her window. Her father searched, but saw nothing. Elias listens. He looks uneasy. He touches the charm in his coat pocket. It feels warm. They walk toward the church square. The priest stands with a broom sweeping ashes from the bonfire pit. He gathers charred wood and loads it into a wagon. He waves at Elias and Ruth. He says he plans to bury the ashes near the church garden. He says the ground will rest easy with the ashes buried deep. Elias asks if any trouble came last night. The priest nods. He found a candle tipped over near the altar. Wax pooled on the floor. He thinks someone tried to break in or frighten him. Ruth steps closer. She asks if he saw anyone. The priest shakes his head. He says the night holds quiet but not peace. They walk with him to the church garden. The ground crunches under their feet. The priest digs a shallow hole and pours in the ashes. He covers them with soil and presses it flat. He tells them old stories, say, ashes from Halloween fires should return to the earth before sunrise the next day. He says it seals the night behind them. Elias and Ruth watch in silence. After they leave the church, they head to the market. Vendors stand by empty stalls. A few women gather bread and carrots into baskets. A farmer unloads sacks of oats. The wind picks up. People hunch over. Elias holds his coat tight. Ruth rubs her hands. They reach the bakery. The baker greets them. His cheeks look red from heat inside the ovens. He hands them small rolls. They thank him. He tells them he heard footsteps on his roof last night. He stepped outside, but found no one. Only frost and feathers. Elias asks about the feathers. The baker says they looked like crow feathers. He shrugs and goes back inside. Elias and Ruth share one roll and pocket the other. They head toward the barber shop. Inside, an old man sits by the window reading a torn newspaper. The barber sweeps hair from the floor. He nods at the children and says people talked all night about strange sounds and odd sights. He says one customer swears he saw a shadow move across his barn. He found marks in the dirt near his door. Ruth steps outside and looks down the street. A carriage rolls past. The horse snorts steam. The driver looks pale and tired. He pulls the reins hard. Elias watches the wheels cut through slush. They wander toward Old Lane again, but before they reach the fields, they see a small crowd near a cottage. A man kneels near his doorstep. He draws shapes in the dirt. Salt forms thick lines. People watch. The man claims he saw two figures near his shed at dawn. He says they moved like smoke. He says they left footprints that faded fast. The crowd murmurs. Some cross themselves. Ruth holds Elias's arm tight. The man stands and wipes sweat from his face. He says he will not sleep tonight. He will sit by the fire with a lantern. He points to a small table with bread and a cup of milk. He says the spirits can take the bread if they want. He only wants his family safe. Elias and Ruth stay quiet. They slip away from the crowd. They head toward the fields. The air feels heavy. The corn stalks bend in the wind. Crows perch in rows. Their black eyes watch the children. Ruth swallows hard. At the farmhouse, the farmer stands by the fence. He looks tired. His clothes look dirty from early chores. He waves and asks if they came to help. Elias nods. Ruth nods too, though she looks tense. The farmer leads him to the barn. Inside, the cows stand calm. The air feels warm from the animals' breath. The farmer says he found strange markings on the barn door when he woke. He shows them scratches dug deep into the wood. Elias leans close. The marks look like claws. Ruth shivers. The farmer says foxes scratch wood, but foxes rarely scratch this high. He points to the upper part of the door. The children stare. The farmer shrugs. He says strange nights bring strange sights. He sprinkles salt along the threshold. He lights a candle and sets it on a shelf. The farmer asks Elias to fetch more hay. Ruth helps move buckets of water. They work in silence. The barn creaks in the wind. A cow moans. Elias sees the farmer grip his shovel tight. He keeps glancing at the door. After chores, the farmer thanks them. He gives them small apples from his pantry. They walk back toward town. Elias bites his apple. The cold makes it crisp. Ruth eats hers slow. Halfway back, Elias stops. He hears a faint whistle. It comes from the hedges. He grips his charm. Ruth steps closer. The whistle comes again, soft and drawn out. The hedges rustle. Elias leans forward. A small girl steps out. She looks younger than Elias. Her clothes look thin and worn. Her hair hangs loose. She asks if they saw her brother. She says he left home last night with a cloth mask and never came back. Elias and Ruth exchange glances. They think of the boy in the barn. Ruth asks where she lives. The girl points to a cottage near the river. Elias says they know where her brother is. He explains he tried to scare people in the barn but went home after. The girl sighs with relief. Tears fill her eyes. She says he's not returned. She searched the roads at dawn. She says she fears the night took him. Ruth shakes her head. She tells the girl the boy left the barn safe. She says he might be asleep somewhere. The girl begs them to help. Elias feels his stomach twist. He looks at Ruth. Ruth nods. They walk with the girl toward the river. The ground turns muddy. Thin ice coats, puddles. The river flows silent, half frozen. They reach a small hut. A woman stands outside with red eyes. She holds a lantern. She asks if they saw her son. The girl runs into her arms. Elias says they saw him leave the barn. The woman asks where he went. Elias does not know. Ruth says the boy looked ashamed. He might be hiding. The woman wipes her face. She tells them she heard scratching at their window last night. She thought it was her son. When she opened the door, the yard stood empty. Only footprints in the frost. She points to the ground. Elias and Ruth follow her. They see faint marks. The footprints look small. They lead toward the tree line. The river curls beside the trees. The woman pleads for help. Elias swallows and nods. Ruth nods to. They step into the thin woods. The trees block wind. The woods feel still. Elias holds his lantern high. The charm bumps in his pocket. Ruth grips her basket of acorns. The girl walks close behind them. The woman follows with her lantern. They find broken branches and flattened grass. Something passed through. Elias sees a scrap of cloth stuck to a branch. It looks like part of a mask. He shows the woman. Tears form again. They move forward. The river runs beside them. Thin ice spiders across still pools. Birds scatter as they approach. Elias hears water drip. He hears small snaps of twigs. The woods feel tense. They reach a small hollow near the water. The ground dips. Moss covers rocks. In the hollow, someone sits, curled up. A mask lies on the ground. A boy hugs his knees. He shakes. His clothes look wet from frost. His face looks pale. The girl cries out and runs to him. The boy lifts his head. His eyes look glassy. He shivers. The woman drops to her knees and pulls him into her arms. Elias and Ruth stand back. The boy babbles. He says he saw a shadow following him. He says he lost his way. He says cold hands grabbed his coat. The woman hushes him. She holds him tight and rocks him. Ruth walks closer. She checks his forehead. Warm tears mixed with cold skin. The boy looks at her. He whispers about a shape in the woods. Ruth tells him he is safe now. The woman stands and pulls him up. She thanks Elias and Ruth. The girl hugs them both. Then they lead the boy home. Elias and Ruth follow. Back at the river hut, they help light a fire. The woman covers the boy with blankets. She gives him broth. His shivering slows. His eyes close. The woman thanks Elias and Ruth again. She says the night almost stole her son. Elias and Ruth leave the hut. The sky darkens. Snowflakes drift down, small and quiet. They walk the river path back to town. Each step feels heavy. Their breath comes slow. The night grows cold fast. When they reach the square, a few lanterns glow. The priest stands near the church door. He sees the children and waves them inside. He gives them warm cider and sits them near the stove. He asks what happened. They tell him about the boy. The priest listens and nods. He says the woods hold old spirits. He says children must stay close to home. Ruth asks if the boy saw a ghost. The priest does not answer. He looks at the fire. He says fear takes many shapes. Elias stares at the stove. He feels the charm in his pocket. It feels warm again. After the cider, the priest walks them to their houses. He stops to say good night. Elias enters his home. His mother wraps him in a blanket. His father rubs his shoulders. He tells them about the woods and the boy. His father says frost plays tricks on the mind. His mother says love guides lost children home. Ruth sits at her table with her parents. She eats porridge. She feels tired but calm. She holds her basket close. Outside, snow falls heavier. The town settles. Lanterns flicker. Dogs curl near stoves. Cats sleep in haylofts. The river flows under soft ice. The woods watch from the edge of town. Snow falls harder the next morning. Thick flakes drift across roofs and pile in doorways. The streets turn white. Horses struggle through slush. Wheels sink deep. People move slow. The town stays quiet. You walk again with Elias and Ruth. But today the cold bites deeper. Elias wakes before sunrise. Frost coats the window. He blows warm breath on the glass and draws a small circle. He sees the lane buried under snow. His parents sit near the stove. His father feeds wood into the fire. His mother stirs porridge. Elias sits on a stool and wraps a blanket around his shoulders. He eats porridge and drinks warm milk. His sister plays with a small charm. She says it looks strange but lucky. Elias takes it back and tucks it into his coat. His mother kisses his forehead. His father warns him to stay close to town. Snow hides many dangers. Elias nods. Ruth wakes to the smell of cabbage boiling. Her mother packs leftover bread into a basket. Her father sharpens a small knife and slices dried meat. Ruth eats and watches snow pile against the door. She wants to see Elias. She wants to check on the woods by the river. She wants to know if the boy slept well through the night. She steps outside with her basket. Snow crunches under her boots. Wind whips her scarf. She sees Elias waiting near the well. His coat looks snowy. His cheeks glow from cold. He smiles and gives her a small piece of dried apple. She smiles back and chews slow. They decide to visit the river hut first. They walk along the lane. Snow swirls around them. The sound of boots sinks into soft drifts. The world feels hushed. Houses look like white mounds. Windows glow faint yellow. When they reach the river, the hut sits half buried. Smoke rises from the chimney. The mother steps outside with a pail of water. She sees Elias and Ruth and waves. They run to her. She smiles wide. She says her son slept safe. She says he woke with a warm face and clear eyes. She calls him outside. The boy steps out wrapped in a wool cloak. He looks stronger. He thanks Elias and Ruth for finding him. He says he saw no shadows today. His voice sounds steady. He gives each of them a dried berry as a gift. Ruth slips hers in her pocket. Elias chews his and nods. Snow grows deeper. The woman invites them inside to warm by the fire. They sit on a wooden bench. The boy plays with a wooden toy horse. Ruth asks about the footprints in the frost. The woman shrugs. She says she saw only her son's prints this morning. She thinks the snow washed away everything else. Elias feels uneasy. After a short visit, they say goodbye and head back toward town. The wind picks up. Snow blows sideways into their faces. They lean forward and pull scarves over their mouths. The lane looks almost gone. White paths stretch in all directions. Elias points to a fence line. They follow it. Halfway back, they find a man digging through snow. He looks thin and anxious. He holds a lantern and a stick. He says he lost his dog. The dog ran off during the night and never returned. He calls the dog's name over and over. Elias offers to help search. Ruth agrees. They split up. Elias calls over the wind. Ruth walks near the hedges. Snow covers every shape. The cold stings her eyes. She wipes her face. She hears a faint whine. She follows the sound toward a frozen ditch. Snow lifts in small gusts. She drops to her knees and digs with her hands. A small dog lies half buried. Its fur looks wet and cold. It shakes and whimpers. Ruth lifts it and holds it close. The dog licks her glove. She calls Elias. He runs toward her. The man hears and hurries over. He grabs the dog and presses it to his chest. Tears freeze on his cheeks. He thanks them again and again. He gives Ruth a copper coin, but she tries to refuse. He insists and pushes it into her hand. She tucks it away. Snow falls thicker. The man carries his dog home. Elias and Ruth hurry toward the square. The market stalls stand empty. Vendors stay indoors. The baker's sign hangs low under white drifts. The butcher's window fogs from heat inside. Elias rubs his arms. Ruth stomps her feet. The church door opens. The priest waves them in. Inside, a large group gathers. Families warm hands near candles and the stove. Blankets pile near benches. The priest says anyone in need can rest here until the storm stops. He brings bread and soup from the kitchen. People line up. Elias and Ruth help serve soup. They pass bowls to cold hands. They carry bread to children. A mother with a newborn sits near the stove. The baby sleeps. The mother's face looks drawn. The priest gives her an extra blanket. She thanks him in a thin voice. Mrs. Pike enters with her shawl pulled tight. She shakes snow from her shoulders. She sits near the stove and watches everyone. She hums a slow tune. Some children stare at her. She nods at them with sharp eyes. Elias feels a tremor run through him. Ruth grips his sleeve. A tall man stumbles in with a wound on his hand. The priest cleans it and wraps cloth around it. The man says something sharp bit him in the woods. He shows the cloth. It has torn threads and tiny holes. People whisper. The priest tells everyone to stay away from the woods until the storm lifts. The blind man enters, tapping his stick. Snow clings to his coat. He smiles and sits. Children help brush snow from his boots. He thanks them and pulls a small pouch of stones. He scatters a few near the stove. He says they guard against cold spirits. Mrs. Pike snorts softly. Snow keeps falling. The wind howls against the church walls. The priest adds more wood to the stove. The room warms. Elias and Ruth sit near a bench and drink soup. The soup tastes thin but hot. Elias tastes carrots and a bit of pork. Ruth dips bread until the bowl empties. Soon the church grows crowded. More families arrive with blankets and lanterns. A group of men carry a woman who fainted in the snow. The priest lays her near the stove. He checks her breath. She groans and opens her eyes. People sigh with relief. Elias sees his father enter the church. Snow covers his coat. He helps the priest carry wood. Elias's mother arrives next. She hugs him and Ruth. She says the storm caught people by surprise. She says roads will close soon. Ruth's parents arrive too. They bring dried apples and sausages. They hand them to the priest. He thanks them. He hands slices to children. Ruth hugs her mother. Her father pats Elias on the back. The afternoon darkens. Candles flicker. The stove crackles. The church smells of melted wax, soup, and damp wool. Outside, the wind screams. People huddle in small groups. Children sleep under blankets. Adults whisper about the storm. Mrs. Pike stands and walks toward the door. She pokes her head outside and sniffs the air. She says the storm brings more than snow. She says something old stirs. People shrink away from her voice. Elias and Ruth listen. Ruth bites her lip. Mrs. Pike tells the priest that she saw strange lights near the river last night. Blue glows that danced across the water. She thinks spirits search for warmth. The priest tells her the storm confuses the eye. Mrs. Pike shakes her head and sits back down. A loud bang shakes the walls. The door bursts open. Two fishermen stumble inside, soaking wet. They carry a net and a bucket. They say someone cut their boat loose. They found it drifting toward the rocks. They saved it, but lost their catch. They think someone or something stalks the river. The priest gives them blankets. Elias helps them sit near the stove. Ruth hands them bread. They thank her. Their teeth chatter. Water drips from their hair and sleeves. The storm grows worse. Snow piles against the door. The priest asks men to dig the doorway clear so it does not jam shut. Elias grabs a small shovel. Ruth grabs another. They push the snow aside. The wind stings their faces. They keep digging until the doorway feels free. When they finish, they go back inside. Their faces burn from cold. The priest praises their help. He gives them hot cider. Elias drinks fast. Ruth drinks slow. The cider warms their chests. Night falls early. The church stays full. No one leaves. The priest says everyone should stay until morning. He assigns blankets and spots on the floor. Elias lies near the stove with his family. Ruth lies near her parents. The children settle. Adults whisper. Elias hears people talk about strange sightings. A farmer swears he saw a shape run across his roof. A woman says she saw eyes in the hedge. A man says his lantern went out with no wind. Elias closes his eyes. He holds the charm in his pocket. He feels safer with it close. Ruth hears her mother pray. Her father sharpens his knife. She holds her basket of acorns. She thinks of the boy in the woods. She thinks of blue lights on the river. She presses an acorn to her chest. The blind man speaks from the bench. He says the veil between worlds thins during the storm. He says October leaves cracks behind. Mrs. Pike agrees. She says spirits ride the snow. People shift uncomfortably. The priest tells everyone to rest. He says nothing will enter the church. Snow presses against the windows. Wind rattles the roof. The stove glows red. One by one, people drift to sleep. The priest sits near the door with a lantern. Mrs. Pike sits near the stove, awake. The blind man taps his stick on the floor now and then. Hours pass. The storm rages. Then a soft sound breaks to quiet. A knock at the door. Faint, slow. Everyone wakes. The priest stands. He holds his lantern and steps to the door. He asks who stands outside. No one answers. The knock sounds again, light, repeated. The priest unlatches the door and opens it a crack. Wind blasts inside. Snow floods the floor. He holds the lantern forward. The flame flickers. He sees nothing, only white. He pushes the door shut and bars it. Mrs. Pike stands. She walks toward the door. She leans her ear against the wood. She breathes slow. She says someone stands out there. The blind man taps his stick twice. He says someone calls for warmth. The priest shakes his head. He says no. He says no one could survive the storm outside. He backs away. People huddle together. A child cries. Ruth grips Elias's hand. Elias feels sweat on his palm. Minutes pass. The knock comes again, louder, harder. The door shakes. The priest shouts for silence. He steps forward, but the door holds against the bar. The knock stops. Wind roars. Then silence. People listen. Hearts pound. The priest tells everyone to sleep. He says storms play tricks. Mrs. Pike sits back down, though her face looks tight. The blind man hums low. The children close their eyes, trembling. Elias stays awake for a long time. He watches the door. He sees the bar hold firm. He hears the stove crackle. He hears snow crash from the roof. He feels sleep pull him. The charm lies warm in his pocket. He lets his eyes close. Ruth peeks at the door. She thinks she hears footsteps outside. She curls under her blanket. She whispers a prayer. She presses an acorn to her lips. She falls asleep with her heart beating fast. The storm rages on. The church stands strong. Lanterns burn. Stoves glow. Outside, snow buries the world. Inside, fear and warmth sit side by side, Morning creeps in without sunlight. The storm stops, but clouds hang low. Snow lies high against the church walls. Windows sit half buried. Lanterns burn low. Families wake stiff and sore. The stove cools. Breath hangs white in the air. You stay with Elias and Ruth as the church stirs like a waking animal. Elias opens his eyes and rubs them. His mother lies beside him, wrapped in blankets. His father snores softly. He hears the priest moving near the doorway. Wood scrapes stone. The priest pulls the bar off the door. He cracks it open. A blast of cold hits him. Snow spills inside. He closes it fast. Mrs. Pike stands from her corner. Her shawl hangs loose. She says someone stood outside for hours. The priest shakes his head. He says no tracks lie outside. He says nothing waited there. The blind man laughs quietly. He says snow hides footprints. He taps his stick on the flagstones. Ruth wakes and sits up. Her mother hands her a bit of bread. Ruth chews, slow. She watches Elias stretch and stand. His charm bumps against his coat. He checks his pocket. It rests warm. He feels safer with it close. The priest asks for volunteers to dig out the door. The storm left the church sealed. Men grab shovels. Women and children move aside. Elias begs his father to let him help. His father nods. Ruth follows. They bundle coats and push into the cold when the priest opens the door wide. Snow presses thick on the porch. It reaches above Elias's knees. He plunges his shovel and pushes hard. Ruth digs beside him. Their breath comes fast. The cold stings their skin. Each scoop clears a path. Men haul snow aside. Children scrape ice from the steps. When the doorway stands free, the priest thanks everyone. Families step outside to stretch. The world looks silent. Roofs sag under snow. Trees bow low. The town seems buried under white feathers. Only thin smoke rises from 1 or 2 chimneys. Elias and Ruth walk toward the square. Their boots sink. They lift their lanterns, though it is daylight. The habit comforts them. The snow crunches deep and loud. As they reach the well, they see more people appear from houses, wrapped in blankets and coats. The baker stands with a shovel, clearing his doorway. The butcher chops wood beside a drift. The barber sweeps snow off his roof with a long broom. Everyone works in silence. No one jokes. Fear lingers from the night. The priest and several men roll barrels from the church. Inside sit salted pork, crackers, dried beans. They plan to share food with anyone trapped by the storm. Families line up with baskets. Elias carries a small sack. Ruth carries her basket of acorns and bread. Mrs. Pike approaches the priest. She says she heard the knock again in the darkest hour. The priest refuses to listen. He says fear tricks ears. Mrs. Pike spits on the snow. She says a spirit wants inside. People tense and shift away from her. She walks toward her house without another word. Elias watches her vanish into the white. Ruth whispers that she makes everything worse. Elias shrugs. He cannot decide if Mrs. Pike knows secrets or tells lies. A thin cry cuts through the square. Everyone turns. A girl stands near a house at the far end of the lane. She holds her arms tight. Snow covers her hair. She points at something on the ground. People run toward her. Elias and Ruth hurry to see. In front of the house lies a dead rooster. Its feathers look blackened. Its body lies stiff. White frost rims its beak. A small mark burned into the snow near it looks like a circle with a line across. Neighbors whisper. The girl's mother rushes out and drags her inside. The father shuts the door and locks it. The priest looks at the rooster. He picks it up and wraps it in cloth. He says animals die in storms. He says nothing more, but his face looks pale. Elias grabs Ruth's hand and pulls her toward the market. He wants to leave the rooster behind. Ruth walks fast. When they reach the baker, he hands them small buns. He says the storm ruined his flour. He needs help carrying sacks from the wagon. Elias and Ruth work with him. They lift small sacks and drag them inside. The baker thanks them with warm bread. The butcher waves them over next. He chops frozen meat with a heavy cleaver. His hands look red. He says to cows froze in the night. He slams the cleaver into a slab and curses. Ruth steps back. Elias swallows hard. The butcher softens his voice and says the storm won't break the town. He says they survived worse years. He hands them scraps for soup. They thank him. They head toward Old Lane. The path disappears under snow. They follow a line of fences. Crows sit on posts, feathers puffed. Elias wonders if the farmer's cows stayed warm. Ruth hopes the marks on the barn door faded. When they reach the farm, they see heavy drifts piled against the barn walls. The farmhouse door stands half buried. Smoke curls from the chimney. The farmer wades through snow with a shovel. He waves weakly at them. His cheeks look white. His beard holds ice. Elias calls out. The farmer says his cows lived through the storm. He thanks the children for their help yesterday. He asks if they will help clear snow from the barn roof. Elias nods. Ruth nods too. They climb a ladder and stand on the lower roof. Snow reaches their knees. They push it off with boards and shovels. The snow falls and piles below. The roof groans. Elias slips once, but Ruth grabs his coat. He steadies himself. When they finish, the farmer brings them inside to warm up. The barn holds heat from the cows. Candles glow in corners. The cows munch hay with steam rising from their mouths. Ruth pets a calf. Elias checks the carved marks on the beams. Some look rubbed down from wind and snow. The farmer hands them warm milk again. He looks tired. He tells them something strange. He says he woke in the night and heard a knock on his door. A slow knock like a child asking for bread. He went outside and saw no one. He says the snow held one small footprint and nothing more. He points to a corner of the barn. Elias peeks. He sees a shoe print melted into straw. Small, too small for a grown man. Ruth's face turns pale. Elias feels his stomach twist. The farmer shakes his head. He says fear plays tricks. He drinks his milk and tries to smile. After they warm up, they walk back toward town. Halfway, they see a small fire burning near the woods. Thin smoke rises. Someone left a pot on the fire. Elias moves closer. The pot holds melted snow and herbs. The fire sits alone. No footprints lead to it. No tracks lead away. The fire burns, steady. Ruth whispers they should not touch it. Elias agrees. They back away and walk fast. The woods stand behind them like dark teeth. When they reach the river, they check on the hut. The mother and boy sit outside in the snow, wrapped in blankets. They wave. The boy looks tired but safe. He thanks them again. The mother invites them inside. They refuse. They want to reach town before dark. In the square, the priest gathers people. He says the storm might return tonight. He says everyone should stay close to town. He wants families to gather in 2 or 3 houses so no one sleeps alone. Lamps light. Fires burn bright. People nod and agree. Ilias's family invites Ruth and her parents to stay with them. Ruth smiles with relief. Their houses stand near each other. They move blankets, pots, and food from Ruth's home to Elias's kitchen. The stove burns hot. The air smells of cabbage soup. As night falls, the snowy world turns silent again. No birds call, no dogs bark, only wind sighs through alleys. Elias sits by the stove with his sister. Ruth sits across from him. Their parents talk in quiet voices. The charm sits in Ilias's pocket like a warm stone. The priest walks door to door. He checks on families. He gives small candles and says prayers. Mrs. Pike sits outside her house with a single candle burning beside her. Snow piles on her shawl. She stares at the road. Her face looks carved from stone. The blind man stands near the church, tapping his stick in slow rhythm. Snow covers his hat. He hums an old tune. Some children watch from windows. They whisper that he speaks to spirits. He turns his head as if he hears them and smiles. Elias leaves the house for a moment to bring wood inside. He sees the blind man on the road. The man calls his name. Elias steps closer. The blind man says the knock at the church door did not come from a person. He says something old wants warmth and wants voices. Elias shivers. The blind man pats his shoulder. He says children survived worse winters. Elias returns inside fast. He tells his father what the blind man said. His father snorts and says, "Fear makes fools of all." He throws another log into the stove. Sparks rise and glow. Ruth helps Ilias's mother ladle soup into bowls. Everyone eats. The soup warms their hands and bellies. The sister giggles and spills broth on her shirt. Ilias wipes it and smiles. For a moment, everything feels safe. Then a loud crash shakes the house. Snow falls from the roof and slides past the window. Ilias's sister shrieks. His father grabs an axe and stands near the door. Ruth's father holds the knife. The mothers gather, the children close. They wait. Silence returns. The wind howls. Elias tries to slow his breathing. Ruth stares at the door. The charm in Ilias's pocket feels hot. He grips it tight. Night deepens. Lamps burn low. They sleep in corners of the room. Elias lies near the stove. Ruth lies near the bench. Parents rest with one ear open. The fire cracks and pops. Snow groans on the roof. Outside footsteps crunch in the snow. Soft, slow. Ilias sits up. He listens. The steps circle the house. Snow falls from the eaves. Ruth sits up too. She grips her basket. Ilias's father stands and holds his axe. Everyone holds breath. The footsteps stop. Silence stretches. Then a faint tap at the window. Not loud, not sharp. A tap like a small pebble hitting glass. Ilias's sister cries. The mothers hold her tight. The fathers step to the window. They see nothing but snow. Another tap. Then silence. The fathers close the shutters and lock them tight. They light more lamps. Shadows dance across the walls. Elias feels his heart pound. Ruth touches his shoulder. They do not speak. The wind rises again, loud and wild. The taps stop. The footsteps fade. The fathers sit down, tense. Slowly, sleep creeps back into the room, though no one feels calm. Outside, the snow presses on windows and doors. The town lies buried under white. The night holds its breath again. Dawn arrives slow. No sunlight breaks through. The sky hangs grey. The storm settles for a moment, but the air stays heavy. The town wakes late. Fires crackle behind curtains. People peek outside with fear in their eyes. You walk with Elias and Ruth as they face another day of winter and rumour. Elias rubs sleep from his face. His sister clings to his arm. She asks if the tapping last night was a bird. Elias says, maybe. He feels the charm in his pocket. It now feels cold, like iron left in snow. His father stokes the fire. His mother stirs porridge. The room smells warm. Elias eats in silence. Ruth wakes under a pile of blankets on the floor. Her mother smiles weakly. Her father checks the shutters. Snow piles high outside. He says the storm will return before night. Ruth and her parents help Elias's family move snow from the roof. They climb out a small window and push snow off the eaves. The snow falls in heavy sheets. When the roof clears, they climb down. Elias and Ruth walk to the square. Snow reaches their waists in some places. They follow narrow lanes carved by shovels. The priest stands near the church door, handing out bread. People line up in silence. Some carry children wrapped in cloth. Some hold lanterns, even in daylight. Mrs. Pike stands near the gate with her shawl pulled low. She watches the line with dark eyes. She mutters to herself. When a woman asks what she says, Mrs. Pike spits a short answer. The dead walk the roads. The woman hurries away. Ruth stiffens. Elias touches her arm. He says Mrs. Pike wants attention. Ruth nods, but fear flickers in her eyes. The priest sees Elias and Ruth and waves them to help. They hand bread to cold hands. They fill buckets with snow and melt it near the stove. They help pass broth to hungry children. The church still fills with families who lost chickens or goats in the storm. A tall man enters with a torn coat. He sits near the stove and tells the priest something strange. He says he saw a figure near the graveyard, a shape standing in the snow. The priest tells him not to speak of it around children, but whispers spread fast. Soon everyone hears. Some claim they saw figures near the graveyard too. Others say lights flickered between tombstones. Elias and Ruth listen. Their hearts pound. They decide to go see the graveyard. The priest warns them to stay away. They promise they will not go far. They leave the church and step into the white. The graveyard sits behind the church, past an iron gate. Snow buries headstones. Only the tallest ones poke through. Trees line the yard. Branches hang low with ice. Elias and Ruth move slowly, lanterns held high. Frost clings to their eyelashes. Their breath curls in the air. A raven croaks from a branch. It shakes snow from its wings and flies off. Elias follows its path with his eyes. Ruth stops near a tall headstone. The engraved name almost hides under frost. She brushes it with her glove. Elias's lantern flickers. He shields it. Snow falls from a branch and lands near his boots. He startles. Ruth whispers his name. He looks where she points. Near a row of small graves, footprints dent the snow. Small, round footprints. Like a child walked there at dawn. No adult prints follow them. Ruth kneels and touches the prints. She feels the cold press into her glove. Elias steps closer. He counts the prints. They lead from the gate to a cracked stone. Then stop. No prints lead away. The children look at each other. The wind hisses through the trees. A shadow moves near the fence. Elias swings his lantern. A man stands there with a long coat and a cane. He watches them with a strange expression. His face hides under his hat. Elias asks what he wants. The man says he heard voices. He says he guards the graveyard during storms. He says the dead should rest. He walks toward them. Snow crunches under his boots. Ruth steps back. Elias holds his lantern tight. The man stops a few paces away. He says someone knocked on the caretaker's hut last night. When he opened the door, no one stood outside. Only snow and silence. He says he followed faint footprints to the graves. He saw a small shape kneel at a stone. He called out. The shape vanished. He found the footprints again this morning. He points to the ground. Elias swallows. Ruth holds her basket loud with her heartbeat. The man tells them to leave. He says children should stay warm inside. He walks away, slow, with the cane tapping on stone. Elias and Ruth watch him disappear into a sheet of white snow. Ruth whispers they should tell the priest. Elias nods. They turn to leave. As they step, they hear a faint sound. A soft cry, like a child sobbing. It comes from behind a stone. Ruth grips Elias's arm. They walk toward the sound. Behind a small tombstone, a stray cat lies curled in the snow. Its fur looks wet. It meows weakly. Elias crouches and lifts the cat. It feels cold and thin. He wraps it inside his coat. Ruth strokes its head. The cat purrs weakly. Elias stands and they hurry back to the church. Inside, children gather around the cat. The priest fetches a towel and warm water. Mrs. Pike watches from a corner. She says the cat saw something. The priest ignores her. He warms the cat by the stove. The cat closes its eyes and sleeps. People continue whispering about the graveyard. The priest orders the gates locked. He sends 2 men to hang lanterns on posts. They carry iron poles and hammer them into the snow. The flames glow through thick flakes. Elias and Ruth step outside. They want to see if the lights reach the stones. They walk to the gate and watch the lanterns sway in the wind. The graveyard looks less dark, but still heavy with snow. Across the lane, the blind man stands alone. His stick taps the fence. He turns his head as if he hears someone speak. Elias calls to him. The blind man smiles and walks toward the sound of Elias's voice. He says the dead stir when the living fear too much. Ruth shivers. He reaches out and touches Elias's shoulder. He says the storm hides many shapes. He says the children should keep salt close. Ruth glances at Elias's pocket. He nods. The blind man pats their heads and walks away, tapping his stick. They return inside. The priest calls for prayer. He asks everyone to speak softly. Elias's father stands with other men near the stove, planning how to dig out more streets. Ruth's parents sit with neighbors, sharing food and stories. Mrs. Pike stares into the flames with a thin smile. Afternoon fades into a strange half-light. Snow falls again, light but constant. People leave the church to check their houses. Some bring skis made from wood boards to slide across snow. Others carry ropes to pull sleds. Elias and Ruth walk with their parents, taking turns dragging firewood back home. At home, Elias helps his father chop wood. His mother boils potatoes and onions. Ruth helps stir a pot of soup. The cat sits near the stove, wrapped in a small cloth. Elias sets a bowl of milk beside it. The cat laps slowly. Night falls early. The families gather in the kitchen again. Ruth's father speaks of strange dreams. He says he dreamed of children running through snow with no footprints. Elias's mother dreams of knocking on the windows. The adults grow quiet. Elias feels his heart race. He holds his charm. Ruth grips her acorns. The sister stares at the window. The wind rises. Snow taps gently at the glass. Elias whispers to Ruth that they should stay awake. Ruth nods later. When everyone sleeps, Elias and Ruth sit by the dying fire. The room feels cold. Elias lays another log in the stove. The flames rise. Shadows dance on the walls. Ruth listens for sounds outside. A low growl spreads across the wind. Not a dog. Not a wolf. Something between. Elias looks at the door. He sees the snow piled high outside the window. The growl fades. Then comes the tap, soft, on the shutter. Elias's skin crawls. Ruth whispers that they should not answer. Elias nods. The tap comes again. Then a scratch, slow, long. The fathers wake and grab their weapons. The mothers hold the children. The sister cries. The cat hides under a chair. The scratching stops. Silence takes the room. Everyone sits frozen. Minutes pass. The wind roars again. Elias's father peeks through a crack in the shutter. He sees nothing. Only black night and white snow. He closes the crack and locks it tight. He sits near the stove. He does not sleep. No one sleeps. Lambs huddle in barns. Cows breathe steam. Horses stamp in stables. The town holds its breath for dawn. Hours crawl by. At last, a faint grey light shines through cracks in the shutters. The wind weakens. Snow falls slow. The families relax a little. Elias and Ruth close their eyes. The charm grows warm again. The acorns sit beside Ruth's hand. Morning will come soon. But the long night reminds the town that winter carries secrets. And some nights last a lifetime. Light crawls across the kitchen floor. Everyone wakes slow. Eyes red, hands stiff. The fire burns low. Elias's father pushes the shutters open. Snow presses high against the windows. He digs a path with a shovel. Cold air spills in. He closes the shutters fast. Ruth stretches and yawns. Her parents sit up. Elias's mother stirs soup. The cat wakes and licks its paw. Elias feels the charm. It stays warm. He stands and watches his father clear snow from the door. They all want fresh air. When the door opens, a wall of snow blocks the way. They shovel it. Ruth and Elias scoop chunks and dump them on the path. The snow lands with a muffled thud. The world outside looks white and empty. The wind stopped in the night. They step onto the porch. The street feels strange. Half the houses look buried. Drifts reach the eaves. Roofs sag under weight. Only a few chimneys send smoke into the still air. The town looks frozen in place. Elias and Ruth walk toward the square. People dig, shout, and haul wood. A group of men climbs ladders to clear snow from a flat roof. The priest stands near the church door, handing out warm drink. Mrs. Pike walks through the snow with her shawl tight. She stares at each house. The baker calls Elias and Ruth to help. His roof lost 3 shingles. Snow leaked into his kitchen. Elias climbs the ladder with him. Ruth holds the bottom. They scrape snow and slide broken shingles into a bag. The baker gives them sweet buns for breakfast. The butcher asks for help next. His shed collapsed under weight. Elias and Ruth shoveled pieces of wood and broken boards. They find tools under the snow. The butcher sighs. He says winter takes more than food. It takes buildings and heat. He gives them meat for soup after helping Elias and Ruth look toward the river. They want to check on the mother and boy in the hut. They walk along a narrow trail made by sleds. The snow lies smooth and quiet. The air smells of smoke and pine. Halfway to the river, they see strange shapes in the snow. Rows of small holes move across a drift, like someone poked the snow with sticks. Elias kneels and touches one. The hole reaches deep. The pattern stretches toward the river. The holes look too small for boots, too wide for paws. Ruth says they should turn back. Elias wants to know what made them. He digs one hole wider. Inside, something glints. He reaches and pulls a small iron nail from the snow. An iron nail, cold and wet. He holds it up. Ruth gasps. Iron nails stop spirits, their parents said. People toss nails in corners during storms. Someone walked along this path, dropping them every few steps. Or someone marked the snow with them. Elias keeps the nail. They follow the holes dot near the riverbank. The holes vanish. The snow lies smooth again. The hut stands ahead, roof piled thick. Smoke comes from the chimney. Elias knocks. The mother opens the door. The boy waves. They invite Elias and Ruth inside. The mother says the night felt long. She heard tapping at the window. She prayed no one answered the door. The boy says he heard a cry near the river, but the river stays frozen. No one walks there in the dark. Elias and Ruth tell her about the holes and the iron nail. The mother frowns. She says some families leave nails on paths for protection. She says someone feared the dark last night. They stay for tea. The hut feels warm. The boy shows them a small wooden horse his father carved before he died. Ruth gives him a biscuit. Elias pets the cat that hides near the stove. They leave before noon. Snow begins to fall again. On the way back, they meet the caretaker from the graveyard. He carries a shovel and a lantern. He says the priest ordered him to check the fences. He says someone broke a gate. Elias and Ruth trade glances. The caretaker shakes his head and says, storms make people do strange things. He heads toward the graveyard. Elias and Ruth return to town. Near the square, Mrs. Pike stands in front of the butcher's shop. She holds a dead crow by its wings. Its body hangs still. She shouts that winter spirits take birds first. People ask her to stop. She drops the crow and walks to her house. Elias feels the town tighten. Fear moves through cold air like unseen smoke. People hurry inside. Parents call children home. Doors slam. Curtains close. Elias hears whispers behind shutters. Ruth asks if they should tell the priest about the iron nail. Elias says yes. They head toward the church. The priest listens with a heavy face. He takes the nail from Elias. He says someone walks at night with fear in their heart. He says they must stay together. He asks if the children saw footprints. They say no. He nods. The priest walks out into the snow. He taps the nail on a stone. His breath fogs the air. He says if someone leaves nails, they fear something real or imagined. He says the town needs calm. Elias and Ruth leave him. They find their parents chopping wood. Elias helps stack logs. Ruth carries buckets of melted snow inside. They prepare for another storm. Night draws close fast. The sky turns black. Clouds stretch low. The wind starts. It whistles through chimneys and fences. Snow falls thick and fast. Lanterns bob in the square as people hurry home. The priest rings the church bell once. A warning. Elias and Ruth hurry inside. The adults lock the door. Elias's father pushes a bench against it. Candles burn. The fire roars. Everyone waits. The storm hits hard. Snow slams the shutters. The house shakes. Elias holds the charm. Ruth holds her basket. The sister hides under blankets. The cat curls on a warm rug. Hours pass. Wind screams. Snow hammers wood and glass. The adults stay awake by the fire. Elias tries to sleep but hears voices in the storm, faint, like whispers. Then comes the knock. One single knock on the door, soft but clear. Elias freezes. His father grips the axe. His mother covers her mouth. Ruth's father holds the knife. Ruth stares at the door. Another knock. Elias feels his heart in his throat. The fathers creep toward the door. They press their ears to the wood. Silence. Then a third knock. Slow, measured. Not wind. Not ice. Ruth's mother whispers that someone needs help. Elias's father shakes his head. He says no voice calls out, only knocks. They wait. The knock stops. Then a scraping against the shutters. Ruth's sister cries. The fathers light more lamps. Shadows dance. Elias smells cold air through cracks. He hears ice sliding off the roof. The scraping moves along the wall. Something drags in the snow. The sound grows faint. The storm swallows it. The house settles again. Everyone breathes again. They stay awake until dawn. The storm fades. The wind slows. Snow stops falling. The night ends with silence. Morning comes pale and quiet. Elias steps outside. Fresh snow covers everything. Smooth as flour. No footprints. No signs. The shutters hold frost. The door sits untouched. Elias looks around. Nothing stirs. Ruth appears beside him. They walk to the square. Neighbors step from homes. They look tired but safe. The priest gathers families near the church. He says they need watchmen. Men volunteer to stay awake each night. They hold lanterns, shovels, and iron nails. Mrs. Pike stands apart. She mutters that the town fights shadows. She laughs at the volunteers. The priest ignores her. Elias hears a soft cry. He turns. The blind man sits on a bench. Snow covers his shoulders. His stick lies on the ground. He tells Elias the storm hides more than wind. He tells Ruth the night listens to the living and the dead. He smiles. Ruth steps back. The blind man asks for warm drink. Elias takes him inside the church. The priest brings tea. The blind man says he walked in the storm last night. He says he heard the knocks at every house. He says the knocks come from no hand. He says the storm itself knocks. People stare at him. He finishes his drink and stands. He taps his stick and leaves the church without help. Elias and Ruth follow him with their eyes until he vanishes behind snowdrifts. Later, Elias and Ruth help dig out the road that leads to the woods. They shovel slowly. They reach a point where the snow looks disturbed. Drag marks cross the path. Branches lie broken. Something heavy moved through the trees. Men see the marks and say, hunters hauled firewood. Others say, wolves dragged a carcass. Elias and Ruth do not speak. Night will come again. Another storm waits on the horizon. The priest tells families to gather in 2 houses. Elias's family hosts again. Ruth's family agrees. They bring blankets, candles, and food. The stove burns hot. The cat sleeps near the fire. Elias sits near the window. He watches clouds roll in. The sky grows dark. He grips the charm. Ruth sits beside him. They wait. Clouds swallow the sky. Snow returns before sunset. The storm sweeps across the fields and climbs over roofs. People hurry into houses. Doors shut. Shutters close. Elias helps stack wood near the stove. Ruth places candles in corners. Parents fill kettles and pans with snow to melt for water. The cat curls on a chair. Wind shakes the shingles. Snow taps the shutters. The fire glows bright. Elias's sister sits on his lap. Ruth reads a small book to calm her. The fathers talk in low voices. The mothers knit and watch the doors. The priest visits each house before night. He gives small bags of salt to each family. Salt for thresholds. Salt for windowsills. He asks everyone to stay inside. He says the storm will last until dawn. He leaves, lanterns swinging in the wind as night falls. The air grows thick. The storm hits hard. Snow slams the shutters. Wind howls down the chimney. The stove rattles. The flames bend sideways. Elias holds his sister close. Ruth grips her basket. Hours pass. The storm grows stronger. The world outside turns black and white. Inside the house, the air stays warm. But fear spreads through the room like smoke. A loud thud hits the roof. Snow slides and falls. Something heavy drops near the chimney. The fathers stand with axes. Elias listens. Ruth listens. The thud does not come again. Minutes pass. Then a low wail moves across the wind. It does not sound human. It does not sound like an animal. It rises and falls like a long breath. The mothers glance at each other. Elias feels his heart pound. The wail repeats. Closer, then another sound follows. A faint scratching at the door. Slow, dragging. Elias's father steps close. He presses his ear to the wood. The scratching grows louder. A rustle in the snow. A soft scrape near the windowsill. Ruth's father stands beside him. He reaches for the latch. The mothers shake their heads. The fathers keep the door closed. Elias sees the charm glow faint in his hand. He holds it tight. His sister cries into his coat. The scratching stops. Silence spreads. The house creaks. The storm hisses. Snow presses against the walls. Elias listens for footsteps. He hears nothing. Then a knock at the window. One single tap. Soft but clear. Ruth jumps. Elias's father grabs a lamp and walks to the window. He opens the shutter a crack. Snow pours in. He shields his eyes and peers out. Nothing stands outside, only wind. He closes the shutter and shakes his head. He says it was ice. The mothers do not look convinced. The storm grows louder. The fire sputters. The stove door rattles. The cat hides behind a bucket. The sister falls asleep from fear and exhaustion. Elias and Ruth try to stay awake. Midnight nears. The storm reaches its peak. Wind screams like voices. Snow beats the shingles. The whole house shakes. Elias feels the walls tremble. Ruth prays under her breath. A loud crash shakes the back of the house. Elias's father runs to the storage room. The door slams open. Snow blows inside. A shutter ripped loose. Cold air blasts in. The men rush to block it. They push a table against the opening. They nail a board over the crack. Snow piles inside fast. Ruth and her parents shovel it back out. Elias's mother throws a blanket over the table to stop the wind. The fire dims. Smoke swirls. Elias coughs. The fathers add more wood. Flames rise again as they fix the shutter. The blind man's voice drifts through the storm, faint singing, a slow, sad tune. Elias and Ruth look at each other. The fathers stop hammering. They listen. The singing grows louder. The blind man's voice carries through the snow. He sings of winter and death. He sings of children lost in storms. He sings of doors that never opened. His voice sounds close, too close. Elias's father opens the shutter a crack again. He sees a lantern flicker near the road. The blind man stands alone, snow burying his boots. He holds his stick and sings at the sky. The wind tears at his hat. Yet he stands strong. The priest appears behind him. He grabs the blind man's arm and drags him toward the church. The blind man stops singing. The lantern light moves toward the gate. The storm swallows them. The fathers close the shutter. They load more wood on the stove. The mothers huddle the children together. Hours crawl by. The storm softens. Wind loses strength. Snow falls slow again. Dawn breaks with a muted glow. The storm ends. Silence covers the town. Families sleep where they sit. Elias wakes first. He hears the faint cry of a crow. The cat stretches and jumps to the floor. Ruth stirs and sits up. Elias opens the door. Snow lies high against the porch. The air hangs frozen and still. He steps outside. His breath hangs white in the air. The world looks buried. Houses sit like islands in the snow. Ruth joins him. They walk to the square. People climb out their windows to dig doors free. Some roofs collapsed. One barn lies flat. The priest stands near the church. He carries a shovel. Snow reaches his waist. The blind man leans against a wall. His coat frozen stiff. Mrs. Pike walks into the square with her shawl covered in frost. She points at the sky and shouts about spirits. No one listens. Everyone works. Elias and Ruth help dig out a house where a baby cries inside. They shovel fast. The father, trapped inside, breaks a window and crawls out holding the baby. He thanks Elias and Ruth. His breath shakes. His hands tremble. They dig paths to more houses. They carry wood to the church. They melt snow for soup. The baker works with frozen flour and old dough. The butcher cuts meat from animals lost in the storm. Everyone shares food. No one laughs. Later, Elias and Ruth visit the graveyard. The caretaker guards the gate with his lantern. Snow piles high, but the graves still sit silent. The caretaker tells them something strange. He found iron nails scattered on the path again. He found strange marks in the snow, like something dragged a stick or a small hand. He shows them a piece of string tied to the gate. The string holds a small wooden charm. It looks like a tiny doll. The caretaker says he never saw it before. He hands it to Elias. Elias holds it. His charm warms in his pocket. The new doll feels warm too. Ruth looks frightened. She asks where it came from. The caretaker shrugs. He says storms bring strange gifts. He locks the gate and walks away. Elias and Ruth stare at the doll. They wrap it in cloth and take it home. On the path back, they find another sign, a bundle of straw tied with thread. It leans against a fence. A long, thin scratch runs across the wooden post. Snow covers it slowly, Ruth says. Someone leaves warnings. Elias hopes they are wrong. They bring the straw bundle to the priest. He frowns. He burns the straw in the fireplace. He places the doll on his desk. He says objects hold stories. He says stories hold fear. He will keep the doll safe. Afternoon brings a strange break in the clouds. Sunlight touches the town. Snow sparkles. People step outside to feel the light on their faces. The air feels warmer, though the cold stays sharp. Elias and Ruth help clear snow from the road to the woods. They want to visit the hut again. Men work with sleds and ropes. They haul wood from the forest. They find tracks that lead deeper into the trees. Tracks too small for men. Tracks too large for foxes. The priest says wolves roamed here years ago. Some men say the tracks belong to wolves. Some say they belong to something else. They cover the tracks with snow and push on. Night comes slow. The sky grows clear. Stars shine bright. The moon hangs low and pale. The town breathes easier. People sleep early. Fires burn warm. No wind howls. No tapping on shutters, but near midnight, Elias wakes. His charm glows faint. He hears footsteps outside. Soft, slow. He climbs from his blanket and peeks at the window. A lantern moves across the square. A tall figure walks alone. The priest carries the doll from the graveyard in his hand. He walks toward the hill behind the church. Elias slips his boots on. Ruth wakes and follows. They do not wake their parents. They step outside. The air feels sharp. Snow crunches under their boots. They followed the priest's lantern. Their breath comes in quick puffs. The night stays silent. The priest reaches the top of the hill. He kneels near a small stone cross. He digs a hole with his hands. He places the doll in the ground. He covers it with snow. He whispers a prayer. Elias and Ruth stand behind a tree. They watch. The priest wipes his eyes. He walks back toward the church. His lantern swings low. The children walk to the small cross. They kneel. Elias brushes snow off the name. Lydia Ward. The stone reads 2 years old. Ruth covers her mouth. Elias feels his heart pound. They stand and walk back to the house. Neither speaks. The town sleeps. The night holds no wind. The snow glows under moonlight. Tomorrow will bring new work, new fear, new stories. Winter in 1890 does not end fast. The next storm waits beyond the hills. Morning arrives, slow again. The sky stays grey, but the wind rests. Elias wakes with the weight of the night still in his chest. He remembers the priest on the hill. He remembers the small cross. Ruth sits near the stove. Her eyes look tired. She holds her basket with both hands. The cat rubs its head against her arm. Elias's father sharpens his axe. His mother kneads dough for bread. The sister hums and stacks wood blocks like tiny houses. Ruth's parents prepare to return to their own home later in the day. They think the storm broke. They hope the worst passed. After breakfast, Elias and Ruth step outside. Snow glitters under the weak daylight. The road looks clear after 2 days of digging. Men and boys haul sleds filled with logs to the square. Women sweep snow from porches. Children build piles of snow to reach frozen windows. Elias and Ruth walk toward the hill where the priest buried the doll. The path lies quiet. No footprints mark the snow. When they reach the cross, the ground looks untouched. No sign of the doll. No hole. The surface looks smooth and flat. Elias bends down. He brushes snow aside. Nothing but frozen earth. Ruth touches his shoulder. She says it feels wrong. Elias nods. They stand in silence. The wind moves soft across the hill. They turn and walk back toward the town. Near the church, the priest talks with the caretaker. They speak low. The priest holds a small notebook. The caretaker points toward the graveyard. Elias and Ruth approach. The priest closes the notebook and greets them. He asks if sleep came easy. They shake their heads. Elias asks about the hill. The priest looks away. He says the ground shifted in the night. Snow hides many things. He walks into the church. The caretaker stays behind. He looks at the children with tired eyes. He whispers something. He says the priest lost a daughter many years ago. He says the storm brings old sorrows back. Ruth looks down. Elias feels a twist in his stomach. They leave the caretaker and head toward the edge of town. They meet the blind man near a fence. He stands with his stick, tapping the snow. He turns his head toward them like he hears their thoughts. He smiles. He says storms talk in riddles. He says the town digs for wood, but might dig for answers instead. He laughs quietly and walks on Dot. Elias and Ruth still want to check the river. The path feels safer in daylight. They walk slow. When they reach the hut, the mother stands outside, hanging blankets on a rope. The boy tosses crumbs to birds. Snow sweeps around their boots. The mother greets the children. She says the night felt peaceful. No taps, no knocks, no voices. She offers potato soup. Elias and Ruth step inside. The hut feels warm and bright. The mother lets them sit near the stove. The boy shows Ruth a new toy horse. Elias strokes the cat. They ask if she heard the storm sing. She says no. She slept. She dreamed of spring. She dreamed of grass and warm rain. The boy says he dreamed of his father smiling. The mother gets quiet. She stirs the soup. They eat together. When they leave, the boy gives Ruth a pine cone. He says it brings luck. Ruth thanks him. Elias and Ruth walk back to town. They find the priest pacing near the graveyard gate. He looks anxious. He mutters to himself. He asks if anyone saw the caretaker. Elias says they spoke earlier. The priest nods and rushes to the church. Ruth asks what troubles him. Elias shakes his head. They walk toward the butcher's shop. The butcher chops frozen meat at a table outside. His cheeks look red. His breath hangs thick in the air. He greets them and hands them a small bit of dried sausage. He says some families ran out of food. He plans to visit them and share meat. He asks Elias and Ruth to help carry baskets. They agree. The three of them walk door to door. They give meat and bones for broth. They see tired faces. Some children cry from hunger and cold. Some parents thank them with tears in their eyes. The butcher carries the last basket to a house near the woods. Smoke curls from the chimney. Snow lies deep against the door. He knocks. No answer. He knocks again. Still nothing. They hear faint movement inside. Then silence. The butcher tries the latch. The door sits unlocked. He opens it. The room sits dark. Cold air spills out. A pot lies upside down. A chair lies on its side. The hearth looks dead. The family lies on the floor, asleep, wrapped in blankets. The butcher steps in and wakes them. The father coughs awake. The mother sits up. The children blink into the light. They say smoke filled the room in the night. They say the fire burned too low. They ran out of wood. They did not leave because the wind screamed outside. The butcher gives them meat. He tells Elias and Ruth to help gather sticks. They search the woods for branches. They find half-buried logs and fallen limbs. They drag them to the house. The mother lights the fire. Warmth returns. As they leave, the father points to the woods. He says he saw someone stand near the trees before dawn. A tall figure. Too still, too quiet. When he stepped outside, the figure vanished. He warns them to keep away from the trees. Elias and Ruth follow the butcher back to town. The sky darkens. Snow starts again. Soft and slow. They reach the square. The butcher thanks them and sends them home. In the square, Mrs. Pike stands near a lamppost. She holds a small sack. She opens it and tosses salt in a circle on the ground. People stare. She says spirits walk the town. She says someone invited them. She says the priest knows more than he speaks. The priest hears her and walks over. His face stays calm. He asks her to go inside. She refuses. She points at him and says he hides truth. She says he talks to the dead. The crowd gasps. The priest turns away without a word. Elias and Ruth head home. They help their parents prepare dinner. The stove warms the room. Soup simmers in a pot. The cat jumps on the bench and looks at the window. It hisses. Elias's father checks the shutter. Snow taps the wood. Nothing more after supper. They sit near the fire. The sister plays with blocks. Ruth reads from her small book. Elias looks at his charm. He feels it pulse with warmth, light as a heartbeat. His father says he will stand watch outside tonight with 2 other men. He puts on his coat and boots. He takes an iron nail and a lantern. He tells everyone to sleep safe. He steps into the night. Snow falls thin and steady. Ruth's parents want to return to their own home. Elias's parents beg them to stay. They agree to stay one more night. Ruth rests her head on her mother's shoulder. Late at night, Elias's father returns. He looks pale. He says the blind man walked in the snow with no lantern and no coat. He said the blind man smiled and told them not to fear. Then he vanished behind a wall of snow. The men searched, but saw no prints. Only Wind, Elias's mother, says the blind man must have gone home. Elias's father nods, but his voice sounds strange. Everyone tries to sleep. The wind rises again. Snow hits the shutters. The cat hides. The sister curls up with Elias. Ruth lies still, eyes wide open. Near midnight, a long moan drifts through the town. Soft at first, then louder. It rolls from house to house. People wake. Doors creak. Windows shake. The moan fades into a distant scream. Then silence. Elias sits up. Ruth sits up. The fathers stand with axes. The mothers hold the children. The priest's bell rings once in the square. Not loud, not frantic. One slow ring. Then quiet. No more voices come. No more knocks. The night passes slow. Dawn arrives with tired faces. People gather in the square. The priest stands on the church steps. His back straight, his eyes hollow. He says the blind man died in the night. Gasps fill the square. Some children cry. Some adults bow their heads. The priest says men found him at dawn near the old well. Snow covered him. His stick lay beside him. His lantern hung from the well's stone wall. His face looked calm. Elias and Ruth walk to the well. The area sits quiet. Snow lies deep. The blind man's footprints lead to the well. No prints lead away. His hat lies half buried. His stick rests beside it. Someone carved a small circle on the well's stone rim, a circle with a line across. Elias remembers the rooster with the same mark. Ruth remembers the caretaker's warning. People step back from the well. The priest orders men to lift the blind man and carry him to the church. They wrap him in cloth. They place him on a table near the altar. The town gathers and prays. Mrs. Pike stands outside the church and watches. She does not pray. She whispers that the storm took him. She says others will follow. She walks away before the service ends. When prayers finish, the priest asks Elias and Ruth to stay. He leads them to a back room. He closes the door. His hands shake. He says the blind man served the church for years. He says he walked the town each winter to check on families. He says he never feared the dark. Ruth asks about the mark on the well. The priest sighs. He says old stories tell of spirits who walk during storms. He says marks warn of danger or ask for passage. He says some villagers in the past carved marks to protect homes. He says he saw such marks last night near the graveyard. Elias asks about the doll. The priest looks away. He says Lydia Ward was his daughter. She died one winter long ago. He buried her doll near her grave. No one touched it until now. He says storms bring memories. He tells the children to stay near their parents. He gives them each a small bag of salt. He touches their heads and dismisses them. Elias and Ruth leave the church. The square feels heavy. Snow falls silent. Men gather wood for a funeral pyre. Women prepare meals for the mourners. Children watch with wide eyes. Ruth's parents decide they will not return home today. They fear the next night. They stay with Elias's family again. They add more wood to the stove. They add blankets to the floor. Night will come soon, and the town waits for whatever the storm hides next. The funeral takes place under a grey sky. Snow falls slow and constant. The blind man lies wrapped in white cloth. Men lift him onto a wooden sled. The priest walks ahead with a lantern. The town follows in silence. Elias and Ruth walk beside their parents. The sister holds Ilias's hand tight. The funeral moves toward the graveyard. The caretaker stands at the gate. He holds a shovel and steps aside. The gate creaks open. Snow piles high between the stones. The sled drags slow. The cloth gathers frost. The priest prays. His voice breaks once. No one speaks. They dig a shallow trench near the path. Snow so deep there is no soil to reach. They will bury him when the ground softens. For now, snow keeps him safe. The priest covers the cloth with more white until nothing shows. The lantern light fades. Mrs. Pike stands beside a tree. Her shawl hangs loose. She says the blind man warned everyone. She says he paid for walking alone. The priest tells her to stop. She laughs and turns away. People whisper. She leaves the graveyard. When the funeral ends, the town returns to the square. Fires burn in barrels. Bread cooks on stones. Children hold cups of warm broth. Elias and Ruth sit on a bench. The cat curls at their feet. The sister tosses crumbs to birds. The priest joins them. His face looks worn. He says the blind man served the church for 30 years. He says winter nights felt safer with him walking the roads. He stares at the snow and says storms take what they want. Ruth asks what the town should do now. The priest says they will hold watch again. He asks Elias's father to lead the watch. He asks Ruth's father to help. Both men agree. They take lanterns, salt, and iron nails. They will patrol from dusk until dawn. Afternoon passes slow. Elias and Ruth helped carry wood to neighbors. They patch holes in roofs. They check on children in the church. The cat follows them, tail high dot. Near the river, they see smoke rise from the hut. The boy plays in the snow. The mother calls to them. She looks pale. She says someone left a bundle on her porch at dawn, wrapped in cloth. Inside lay a small stone carved with a circle and line. She buried it in the snow. She says she will not bring it inside. Elias and Ruth walk back toward town. They see a trail of those small holes again in the snow. The holes lead nowhere. They fade near a fence. The wind covers them fast. At dusk, the priest rings the church bell 3 times. The watch begins. Men with lanterns gather in the square. They dip nails in salt. They tie them to strings. They hang charms on lampposts. Ruth and her parents go to Elias's house. They bolt the door. The mothers light candles. The stove glows warm. The sister falls asleep on the bench. The cat curls beside her. Elias and Ruth sit near the window. They watch the men walk the road. Lanterns swing. Snowflakes dance. The streets look calm. The fathers pass by once and wave. Elias waves back. Hours pass. The storm stays away. The sky clears. Stars shine. The moon lights the snow like silver. The town breathes easier. Some families sleep. Some stay awake. Near midnight, Elias and Ruth hear footsteps outside. Heavy boots in the snow. They peek through a crack in the shutter. The priest stands in the square. He holds a book in one hand and a lantern in the other. He looks at the church tower. He raises the lantern. He walks toward the well. Elias's father joins him. He carries his axe. Ruth's father carries a rope. They walk to the well and lean over the stone rim. The lantern light shines into the black. They speak in low voices. Elias tries to hear. He opens the shutter wider. Cold air touches his face. He hears the priest say something about a hole. He hears his father say something heavy sits on the bottom. They drop the rope down. They pull something up. Elias sees it. A bundle of cloth tied with twine. They carry it to the church. Snow blows across the square. The lantern light flickers. Elias closes the shutter. He tells Ruth what he saw. Ruth holds her basket tighter. She says the well hides secrets. Elias nods. Minutes pass. The fathers return. Their faces look pale. They tell the mothers to wake the children. The mothers gather blankets. The priest comes inside with the bundle. He places it on the table. He unwraps it. Inside lies a small wooden box, wet and cold. He opens the lid. Inside sit coins, old silver coins, covered in frost. The priest says someone hid money in the well. Someone wanted the blind man to find it. He looks out the window. Snow falls again. He says this feels like a warning. Mrs. Pike bursts into the house without knocking. The fathers raise their axes. She ignores them. She points at the box and says, "The storm wants payment." She says the blind man carried no debts, so the storm took his life instead. The priest orders her out. She drops a handful of salt on the floor and leaves. The mothers lock the door behind her. The priest sits at the table. He closes his eyes. He whispers prayers. Elias watches the box. The coins glint. Ruth touches Elias's shoulder. She says the town lost something tonight, not gained. The fathers return to the watch. The priest goes with them. The mothers pull the children close. The fire crackles. The cat sits near the table, ears flat. Wind rises again. Snow taps the shutters. A faint howl carries across the roofs. Elias hears voices in the storm. He cannot tell if they come from men or wind. Ruth's mother sings a soft tune to calm the children. Elias sits near the stove. He holds the charm. It feels cold again. Hours pass. The watch circles the town again and again. The snow grows thicker. The lantern lights vanish behind white walls. The men call to each other. Their voices sound small and far. Near dawn, the storm weakens. The priest and the fathers return. The priest's coat hangs heavy with ice. His beard holds frost. He says the storm chased them, but never touched them. He sets the wooden box on the table. He says the money will go to the church. He says the blind man will be buried with peace when the ground thaws. He leaves the house. The fathers sit by the stove and warm their hands. Elias's father says he saw something in the storm, a shape tall as a man. It walked beside the church and vanished near the graveyard. Ruth's father saw nothing, but heard footsteps behind him. Every time he turned, nothing stood there. The mothers say the storms twist the senses. The fathers do not argue. They drink warm broth and sleep in chairs. When morning comes, the priest rings the bell again. People gather. He says the well holds no danger now. He says the box stays safe. He asks the town to stay near the square for the next storm. He says no one should stay alone. Mrs. Pike stands near the gate and laughs. She says the well will fill again. She says the blind man warned them. The priest ignores her. Elias and Ruth walk toward the woods. They want to check on the tree line. They see fresh tracks, 2 sets of footprints, one large, one small. They follow them. The prints lead to a fallen log. Beside the log lies a glove, a child's glove, red cloth, torn at the fingers. Ruth picks it up. Snow falls from it. She looks around. No one stands near. Elias calls out. No answer. They leave the glove with the priest. Later, the priest speaks to the town again. He says no child went missing. He says the storms steal objects, not people. He asks everyone to return home and rest. He looks older than yesterday. Elias and Ruth help clear a path to the river. They bring food to the mother and boy. The mother looks tense. She says she heard someone walk behind her in the night. She found footprints near the shed. She sprinkled salt around her door. The boy asks if the blind man reached heaven. Ruth hugs him and says yes. The boy nods and gives her another pine cone. He says his father sent it. The mother's face grows pale. She pulls the boy inside. Elias and Ruth walk back to town. Snow fills their footprints behind them. They enter the square. Lanterns hang from poles. Fires burn in barrels. People hurry with wood and water. Night approaches again. The sky grows dark. The priest orders the watch to gather. The fathers take their lanterns. Salt bags hang from their belts. Iron nails rest in pockets. The snow falls steady. Inside the house, the mothers prepare soup. The sister plays with blocks. The cat curls on a blanket. Ruth sits near Elias. She says the storm grows weaker, but the fear grows stronger. Elias nods. He hears the wind whisper. When darkness wraps the town, the watch spreads out. Lanterns glow like tiny stars in the snow. The wind rises. Snow taps shutters. The stove crackles. A knock hits the door, loud and sharp. The fathers jump. The mothers freeze. Elias grabs the charm. Ruth grabs her basket. The knock comes again, slow, measured. The fathers approach. They ask who stands outside. No voice answers. They crack the door open a finger's width. Snow blows in. No one stands there. Only night. They shut the door fast. Bolt it. Place a chair against it. Silence returns. The sister hides under a blanket. The cat hisses at the door. The mothers whisper prayers. Elias and Ruth stand near the window. They look out. A lantern sways in the square. The priest walks alone. He carries no coat. Snow covers his hair. He walks toward the graveyard dot. Elias and Ruth look at each other. They slip on boots and coats. They open the back door and step into the snow. The mothers call after them, but they pretend not to hear. The fathers guard the front door. They do not notice the back door open. The children follow the priest through the snow. Lantern light flickers. The moon hides behind clouds. The priest reaches the graveyard gate. He pushes it open. He steps inside. The children hide behind a tree. The priest kneels near a fresh drift of snow. He digs with bare hands. He pulls something from the snow. A wooden toy horse, the same kind the boy owns. The same shape and size. The priest holds it to his chest. He weeps. Elias and Ruth step closer. The priest hears them. He wipes his face. He asks why they followed. Elias says the storm does not scare them. Ruth says the dead do not scare them. The priest shakes his head. He says he buried his daughter's doll near her grave, but the snow keeps giving back things he gave up long ago. He says the storm speaks through lost things. He says the well holds more secrets than coins. He hands the toy horse to Ruth. He says keep it safe. He says the storm might want it back. He stands and walks back to the church. The children stand in silence. They look at the horse. Snow melts on its surface. Ruth wraps it in cloth and places it in her basket. They leave the graveyard. Snow falls on their footprints. The night swallows the sound of their steps. When they return home, the fathers shout with relief. The mothers cry. They lock the door. The stove burns bright. The cat greets them with a low meow. Elias and Ruth sit by the fire. They hold the horse. The charm grows warm. The storm grows quiet. Tomorrow will bring more snow, more fear, more secrets. Winter in 1890 does not let go. Morning brings a thin beam of sunlight between clouds. It shines over the roofs and touches the snow with a pale glow. Elias wakes near the stove. Ruth sleeps beside her parents. The sister snores softly. The cat stretches and yawns. Elias stands and steps outside. The air bites his face. He walks into the square. The priest stands near the church steps, broom in hand. He sweeps snow away from the door. He looks tired. He nods at Elias, but says nothing. Ruth joins Elias a moment later. She holds her basket tight. Inside rests the wooden horse wrapped in cloth. She asks if they should return it to the boy at the hut. Elias thinks a moment. He says yes. They leave the square and walk toward the river. Snow covers their boots up to their ankles. Frost glitters on fences. The wood stands silent. When they reach the hut, smoke rises from the chimney. The boy runs out to greet them. He smiles wide. The mother follows, wiping her hands on her apron. Ruth hands the wooden horse to the boy. His face lights up. He says he lost it days ago. He hugs it and runs inside to show his mother. The mother thanks them. She invites them in for warm bread. They step inside. The hut feels safe. The fire burns bright. The boy plays with the horse on the table. The mother says she thought wolves took it. She says she heard howling last night. She sprinkled salt at the door. She placed an iron shovel across the threshold. She slept in peace. Elias and Ruth eat bread and nod. The mother gives them a small bundle of dried berries to take home. The boy hugs Ruth and thanks her again. They leave and head back to town. On the path, they see something strange. A dove lies in the snow, white feathers stained with soot. Its wings spread, its eyes closed. Elias kneels. He lifts the bird. It feels warm, still alive. A faint flutter in its chest. Ruth takes off her scarf and wraps the dove. They hurry to the church. The priest sees them and opens the door. He touches the dove. He says it flew through chimney smoke. He heats stones by the fire and places the dove near them. The bird twitches. Its wings move slightly. Elias watches. Ruth holds her basket tight. The priest says the bird will live. He thanks them for their kindness. He asks if they heard any tapping or knocking last night. They shake their heads. He looks relieved. Outside, more people gather in the square. Men shovel paths for sleds. Children pile snow into shapes that look like fort walls. Women boil meat in large pots. The butcher brings bones and cuts. The baker brings stale loaves. People cook a soup for the whole town. Elias and Ruth help pass bowls. The soup smells warm. Steam rises into cold air. The sister runs around with a spoon, spilling drops in the snow. The cat follows her, hoping for scraps. Laughter returns for a moment. Mrs. Pike watches from her doorway. She holds her shawl tight. She whispers that laughter invites spirits. No one listens. The caretaker appears from the graveyard. He walks slow. He tells the priest he found fresh marks again. A small circle with a line across carved into a tree trunk. He says the snow covers most of it. He asks if he should cut the tree down. The priest says, leave it. The caretaker nods and returns to the churchyard. As afternoon fades, Elias and Ruth walk toward Old Lane. They want to see if the farmer and his cows survived another night. The path leads through deeper snow. When they reach the farm, smoke curls from the barn chimney. The farmer greets them with a tired smile. The barn door stands open. Cows chew hay. The farmer shows them a broken board near the roof. Snow forced its way in. He patched it with spare wood. He thanks them for checking on him. Inside the barn, Elias sees the protective marks carved into the beams. Some look fresh, some look worn. The farmer says he carved new marks last night. He heard the storm scratch at the walls. He swears he heard a voice call his name. Elias feels his arm hairs rise. Ruth steps closer to him. The farmer gives them warm milk again. They drink and leave. Snow falls slow. The sky grows darker. On the path back, they see footsteps near the fence. Large prints, heavy, too large for a man. They follow the prints with their eyes. The prints end near a tree. No prints lead away. Elias and Ruth exchange a look, then hurry back to town. At home, their parents finish patching the shutters. They melt snow for water. They add salt to the windowsill. The priest ordered every family to sprinkle salt before sunset. Elias's mother pours a thin line across every door. Ruth's mother hangs bells on the doorknobs. The soft jingling sounds strange in the quiet house. Night comes without warning. The sky turns black. Stars fade. Snow thickens. Wind rises. The watch gathers outside. Elias's father carries a lantern. Ruth's father carries a sack of salt. They kiss their families and leave. Inside, the mothers tuck blankets around the children. The sister curls near the stove, holding the cat. Elias and Ruth sit by the window. Snow hits the shutters like soft fists. Candles flicker. The wooden horse rests on the table beside the bread basket. Hours pass. The storm deepens. The wind howls. The stove rattles. The shutters shake. Elias hears a distant crack, like wood breaking under weight. The cat hisses. The sister wakes and cries. The mothers hold her close. Outside, a scream cuts through the wind, short and sharp. Ruth jumps. Elias stands. They press ears to the shutter. The scream comes again, then silence. The mothers grab knives. They whisper prayers. Footsteps crunch outside. Slow, heavy steps. Closer, closer. Snow falls from the roof. Ice slides down the window. The footsteps reach the door. A knock. 3 times. Measured, cold. The fathers do not return. No voices follow the knock. Elias's mother shouts through the door. She asks who stands outside. Silence answers. The knock comes again, harder. Ruth holds the basket tight. Elias grips his charm. The mothers stand still. The knock stops. Footsteps move away. Snow shifts. The wind drowns all sound. The mothers blow out candles. The room stays dark. Only the stove gives light. Hours crawl. The storm fades. The house settles. The sister sleeps again. The cat lies still. Before dawn, the watch returns. They look shaken. Elias's father carries a broken lantern. Ruth's father's coat is torn. The priest walks with them. His face looks pale. They say something shattered a fence near the river. They saw large prints in the snow. The prints moved fast, faster than a man. The men followed, but the prints vanished near the woods. They heard screams from the trees. They found nothing. The priest says the storm spreads fear. He says fear sees shapes in snow. He tells everyone to sleep. He leaves the house without another word. When dawn arrives, the town steps into the square again. Children hold their mothers' hands. Men search for broken fences. Women clear paths. The baker brings bread dipped in snow. The butcher carries meat wrapped in cloth. Elias and Ruth search along the river. They find a broken sled. A rope snapped in half. Snow covers most of it. No sign of the owner. The priest orders men to search the woods. They walk with axes and lanterns. They do not find the missing man. Mrs. Pike stands near the river and sings a strange lullaby. Her voice carries across the ice. She holds a wooden toy in her hand, a small figure carved from pine. She tosses it into the river. The current takes it under the ice. She walks away without speaking. Ruth holds the horse tight. Elias touches his charm. The river flows silent. They return to town. The priest calls a meeting. He says no one leaves the square at night. He says the storms hide things. He says people must not wander alone. He orders men to guard the graveyard and the well. He orders families to sleep in groups. Mrs. Pike shouts from outside. She says the dead walk already. She says the storm does not care who stands guard. The priest ignores her. As night draws near, the sky darkens again. The wind rises. People hurry inside. The fathers prepare for another watch. The mothers gather blankets and pots of soup. Elias and Ruth sit by the fire. The cat curls on the rug. The sister plays with a small bell. Elias hears a loud crack outside, like ice splitting. The fathers open the door and step out. They see nothing, only snow. They close the door and bar it with a heavy beam. Night presses against the house like a weight. Wind screams. Snow slams the shutters. Ruth leans her head on Elias's shoulder. He holds her hand. The charm feels warm again. The horse sits silent on the table. Tomorrow will bring new storms, new fear, new signs. Winter in 1890 holds its breath, waiting for the next knock that the next morning begins with sharper cold. Ice crawls up window glass. Frost forms on nails in the doorframe. Elias wakes to the sound of the priest's bell. One slow ring, then another, then silence. The fathers stand. The mothers hold their breath. Elias and Ruth pull on coats and step outside with the others. The square fills with people. Their breath rises in white clouds. The priest stands near the well. Snow covers his shoulders. His eyes look hollow. He lifts his hand and points toward the woods. Men follow his finger. Smoke rises from between the trees. Not chimney smoke, thick, dark, heavy. The priest says someone lit a fire deep in the woods. No one should be out there. The watch did not find anyone. The men gather axes and lanterns. The priest leads them toward the woods. Elias and Ruth start to follow. Their fathers stop them. They order them to stay with the mothers. The children watch from the edge of town. The men disappear into the trees. The smoke rises higher. Birds fly from branches. Snow falls harder. The wind grows sharp. Ruth touches her basket. Elias clutches his charm. The mothers herd everyone back inside. In the house, candles burn all day. The stove warms a pot of soup. The cat hides under the table. The sister strokes its fur. Elias and Ruth sit by the window and stare at the woods. No movement. No sound. An hour passes. Another, then a distant shout. Men stumble out of the woods. Their faces pale. Their lanterns swing. The priest runs ahead. He yells for blankets and water. People rush to help. Elias and Ruth run into the square. They see a man carried between two others. His body limp. His coat burned. His boots half melted. Smoke rises from his clothes. They lay him in the snow. The priest kneels beside him. The man coughs once. His eyes flutter. He whispers something. No one hears. He dies. The priest stands and orders the men back into the woods. They return minutes later with charred boards, broken tools, and a pile of small stones covered with strange marks, circles, lines, symbols, burned into their surface. Mrs. Pike appears and screams that the storm takes offerings. She says the woods wake hungry. The priest orders her back into her house. She spits snow and walks away. The dead man lies on a blanket. The townsfolk gather in a circle. The priest crosses himself and prays. No one speaks. Elias and Ruth stand close. The man's burned coat smells like pitch and ashdot after the prayer. The priest asks the carpenter for a coffin. The carpenter nods and walks away. Men carry the body to the church. The caretaker rings a bell. Children weep. The snow covers the burned man's footprints. Elias and Ruth walk home. No one cooks in the square. No one laughs. The soup pots sit cold. The fires die down. The storm darkens the sky again. Inside the house, the mothers light candles. The fathers return with faces pale and silent. The sister crawls into her mother's lap. The cat sits near the stove and stares at the door. The storm arrives fast. Snow pounds the shutters. The wind screams across the roofs. Elias hears a boom like a tree falling. The fathers grab axes. The mothers hold lanterns steady. A sharp knock hits the window. A single tap. Then another, slow, measured. Ruth pulls Elias close. The mothers blow out the candles. The house sinks into darkness. The stove glows faint. A voice calls from outside. Low, male, not loud. A stranger's voice. He says, "Open the door." He says he needs warmth. Elias's father asks his name. The stranger does not answer. He repeats the same words. "Open the door." Elias's father refuses. The stranger breathes hard. Snow hits the shutters in waves. The stranger's voice fades. The footsteps move away. The mothers relight one candle. A thin glow fills the room. Ruth squeezes Ilias's hand. The sister hides under blankets. Moments later, another sound. A scrape, metal on wood. Something drags across the door. The cat hisses. The fathers raise axes again. The scraping stops. Silence. Hours pass. The storm softens. Snow whispers instead of screams. The children fall asleep. The mothers sit with tired eyes. The fathers do not rest. At dawn, the men step outside. They return quickly. They bring something with them. A door latch torn from its hinge. Bent metal. Burned wood. Snow stuck to charred edges. The priest arrives and sees it. He says the man from the woods was not alone. He says the storm carries more than wind. People gather again. They whisper about the fire in the woods. They whisper about the burned man. They whisper about the stranger's voice. The priest speaks. He tells the town to gather salt and water. He tells them to mark their doors before nightfall. He orders the watch to guard the well. He orders families to sleep in one place. No one goes out alone. Mrs. Pike shouts from her doorway that salt will not stop storms. She says storms carry spirits, not thieves. She says the well belongs to the dead now. People ignore her, but their eyes hold fear. Elias and Ruth go to the church. They carry buckets of water. The caretaker boils the water and adds salt. He fills cups and bowls. People dip rags and wipe door frames and windows. The caretaker leans close to Elias and whispers. He says he found something new in the graveyard. A small skull near the surface. Not human, crow or raven. Wrapped in cloth, marked with circles. He buried it again and covered it with snow. Ilias's stomach turns. Ruth grips her basket. The caretaker says the storm digs. The storm uncovers. The storm remembers. In the afternoon, the baker brings warm bread. People eat in silence. The blacksmith sharpens nails. The butcher cleans knives. The shoemaker hands out wool scraps for boots. Elias and Ruth walk to Old Lane again. The farmer sits outside the barn, sharpening his own axe. His face looks carved from stone. He says the cows woke in panic during the night. They tried to break the stalls. He heard something scrape the boards. He carved more marks in the wood. The cows calmed. He shows them a new symbol. A deep circle in the beam. A line across, a nail hammered into the center. Blood dried on the nail. He will not say where the blood came from. Elias and Ruth leave quickly. On the path home, they see a small figure in the snow. A child, standing still, wearing a long coat and scarf. The child does not move. Elias calls out. No answer, he calls again. The child turns its head, then falls backward into the snow. Elias and Ruth run. They reach the child. It is the boy from the hut, his face red from cold, his breath faint, his fingers stiff. Ruth wraps him in her coat. They lift him and run to the priest. Inside the church, the caretaker builds a fire and warms blankets. The mother arrives in tears. She hugs her son. The boy whispers something in her ear. She turns pale. She looks at the priest. She says he heard a voice call him by name. The voice told him to walk. The voice told him the storm was hungry. The priest tells everyone to leave the church and go home. He promises to watch the boy through the night. The mother refuses to go. She sits beside her son with her hands on his cheeks. Elias and Ruth leave. Snow thickens again. The square empties. Lanterns sway. Fires in barrels hiss as snow smothers them. Inside the house, the mothers prepare more soup. The fathers hang charms on the door. The sister naps. The cat watches the shutters. Ruth sits close to Elias. She says the storm speaks now. It says names. It knows who they are. Elias holds the charm. It pulses warm. Night arrives like a heavy blanket. Thick snow muffles every sound. The fathers join the watch. The mothers sit by the stove. Elias and Ruth sit near the window. The candle flame dances. A knock hits the roof. Not the door, not the window. The roof, loud, sharp, once, twice. The mothers step back. They look up. Snow falls from the rafters. Another knock. Then quiet. The sister starts to cry. The mothers hush her. The cat hides under blankets. Elias hears a faint creak above them. He asks the mothers to check the attic. They refuse. Elias and Ruth climb the ladder on their own. The attic is dark. Cold breath fills the air. Elias holds the candle high. Shadows stretch across beams and crates. Snow drifts through a crack. The roof bows under weight. Ice forms on nails. Something rests near the far wall. A shape under a sheet. Elias steps closer. He pulls the sheet back. A broken sled. Splinters. Burn marks. The same sled they found near the river. The priest said it would be burned, but here it sits. In their attic. Ruth gasps. Elias drops the sheet. The shapes in the shadows move. A crate shifts. A board falls. Footsteps on the roof. Slow, heavy. Snow slips from tiles. The roof groans. Elias grabs Ruth's hand. They climb down fast. They shut the attic door. The mothers stare. The fathers return with the priest. They listen. Silence. The storm rests again. The fathers search the attic. They find nothing. No sled, no footprints. Only dust and snow near the beam. The priest says fear twists the mind. He says they must sleep. Everyone tries to rest. The storm keeps tapping the roof. The candle burns low. Morning feels far away. Dawn creeps in thin and weak. The storm leaves the town covered in white hills. Chimneys stand like black teeth in the snow. Doors groan as families push them open. People step out and brush snow from their roofs. Some sweep paths to the square. Some stay inside and pray. Elias and Ruth dress fast. They eat bread and cold stew. The cat eats scraps and sits on Elias's shoulders. The sister wraps a scarf twice around her neck. Their parents keep close watch, but the children slip outside when they turn their heads. The square feels too quiet. The priest stands near the church door. He holds his hat in his hands. His eyes look red. The caretaker sweeps snow from the steps. The boy from the hut sits on a bench beside his mother, wrapped in heavy blankets. He leans against her side, half asleep. Elias and Ruth walk over. The mother says the boy woke in the night and screamed. He said something stared at him through the window. Something tall, something with long arms. She closed the shutters and held him until morning. The priest offered to bless the hut. She refused. She trusts salt and fire more than words. The priest approaches Elias and Ruth. He asks if they slept. They nod. He says he must show them something. He leads them into the church. The caretaker shuts the door behind them. Inside, candles glow along the walls. The wooden box from the well sits on the altar. The coins inside look brighter than yesterday. The priest lifts one coin. It feels warm. He shows them a mark on the edge. A circle with a line across. The same mark carved in the well. The same mark carved in trees. The same mark painted on the rooster's door. He says the storm speaks with marks. He says something leaves these coins as messages or warnings. He does not know which. He places the coin back in the box and shuts the lid. He leads them to the back room. A small blanket lies on a table. Under it sits the dove they saved. Its wing twitches. Its eyes open. It tries to stand. The priest smiles. He says small things live while strong things fall. He says that means hope. Elias and Ruth help the priest feed the dove crumbs of bread. The bird pecks slowly. Its feathers shake. The priest thanks them and sends them away. He says he will ring the bell if trouble comes. Outside, the wind stirs. Snow drifts off the roofs. Elias and Ruth walk to Old Lane again. They want to see if the farmer remains safe. When they reach the fence, they hear voices. Two men stand at the barn door, speaking with the farmer in hushed tones. One man holds a half-broken lantern. The other holds a torn coat. They say they found these in the woods. They say the torn coat matches the burned man. They say someone dragged the body deeper before the men pulled him out yesterday. The farmer looks pale. He tells the men to leave the items outside. He sprinkles salt on them. He says he will burn them later. The men walk back toward town. Elias and Ruth stay hidden behind a tree until they vanish. The farmer steps outside. He sees them. He waves them in. They enter the barn. The cows stand still, silent. The farmer lowers his voice. He says he heard footsteps on the roof last night. He says he saw shadows move behind the boards. He says he carved new marks to keep the cows safe. Elias and Ruth leave quickly. Snow creaks under their boots. They sense eyes on them from the trees. They hurry. Near the square, they see Mrs. Pike again. She stands at her fence, holding a handful of ash. She blows it into the wind. The wind carries it across her yard. She mutters words under her breath. Elias and Ruth pass without speaking. The sun lowers. People move faster. They patch roofs and hang lanterns. The mothers gather food. The fathers sharpen tools. The children carry water. The square smells like smoke and fear. As evening falls, a sudden sound breaks the quiet. A horn blasts once from the graveyard, then silence. People freeze. Another blast. The priest runs toward the hill. Men follow. Elias and Ruth chase after them. When they reach the graveyard gate, they see footprints leading from the path to the stones. Deep prints, heavy. The caretaker lies on the ground, his face pale, his hands frozen around the horn. He breathes but cannot speak. The priest checks him. The caretaker grips the priest's coat. He points at a row of graves. Snow piled high. One grave looks disturbed. Snow shifted. A mound raised. The priest orders men to clear it. They dig with shovels. Snow flies into the air. Beneath the snow, they find a coffin lid cracked open. The coffin empty. The priest turns white. The men cross themselves. The caretaker moans. The priest orders the lid sealed and snow piled deeper. He tells the men to carry the caretaker to the church. Elias and Ruth follow. The caretaker shakes. His lips tremble. He whispers one word, eyes, then he faints. The priest locks the church doors. He lights every candle. The caretaker lies under blankets near the stove. The townsfolk gather inside. Men stand guard at windows. Women calm crying children. The priest kneels and prays loud. Elias and Ruth stand near the wall. Their hearts race. The box with coins sits on the altar. The wooden horse sits in Ruth's basket. The charm burns warm in Elias's hand. The cat hides behind pews. Thunder cracks outside. Snow falls harder. Wind pushes against the walls. The church shakes. The candles flicker. The priest raises his voice and prays louder. People join him. A loud bang hits the church doors. Wood cracks. Men rush to brace it. They press shoulders and knees against the planks. Something heavy hits again. The doors bend. Snow blasts through cracks. The priest shouts for salt. People throw salt on the floor and the doors. The banging stops. The wind howls. The candles sway. Silence falls. The storm holds its breath. The priest tells everyone to stay still. No one speaks. The caretaker stirs. He opens his eyes and whispers again. He says he saw something climb from the broken grave, tall, thin, no face. He says it walked toward the church. Then he fainted. Elias and Ruth hold each other. The priest stands and opens the wooden box. He takes out one coin. He throws it to the door. It lands in the snowdrift outside. A hiss echoes from the dark. Then silence. The priest closes the lid. The wind rises again. Snow slams the windows. A sharp sound cracks the stained glass. A small pane shatters. Snow and wind rush in. Men cover the window with boards. Night drags on. People fall asleep in pews. The priest watches the doors. The caretaker sleeps near the fire. Elias and Ruth doze on a bench. The cat curls between them. Morning comes without sun. The storm rests for now. The priest opens the doors. Snow spills inside. The men dig a path to the square. They search for prints. They find none. The caretaker wakes and sits up. His hands shake less. The priest asks what he saw. The caretaker describes a figure standing near the broken grave, tall, wrapped in shadows, no face, no breath. It turned toward him. Then everything went black. Some people say it was a trick of the storm. Some say it was a man wearing a cloak. Mrs. Pike says it was the first of many. The priest orders the grave, sealed with stones and iron nails. Men gather tools. They pile rocks and drive nails into wood. They sprinkle salt. They stand guard until dusk. Back at the house, the mothers warm water for washing. The fathers sleep in shifts. The sister plays with the cat again. It bats at her scarf with its paws. Elias and Ruth eat dried apples and stew. Ruth says the storm will rise again tonight. Elias nods. He hears the wind whisper through the cracks of the window. He holds the charm. It pulses in his hand. As night falls, lanterns light the square. Fires burn in barrels. People sing low songs to steady their hearts. The priest blesses doorways. The caretaker sits in the square with a blanket wrapped around him. The storm returns. Snow falls heavy. The wind whips through alleys. Elias and Ruth sit by the window. The charm warms. The wooden horse rests on the table. The cat sleeps on the bench. When the first knock comes, it hits the door like a hammer. Hard, loud. The fathers jump. The mothers freeze. Elias and Ruth stand. The knock comes again. The fathers shout through the door. No answer. They open the window, shutter a crack. Snow rushes in. No one stands outside. Only lantern light and empty snow. The knock hits the door again. The father bolts it tighter. The storm laughs. A long, low moan. Windows rattle. The roof groans. The wind screams over the chimney. Elias feels the charm pulse stronger. Ruth grips his arm. The night stretches on. The storm does not stop. Something walks the streets, and the town waits for dawn. Morning sneaks in behind grey clouds. The storm pulls back but leaves deep snow pressed against doors. Men climb out of windows to clear the square. Children wake cold and confused. Fires restart. Soup cooks again. No one wants to speak of the night. Silence covers the town heavier than snow. Elias and Ruth stretch their arms. The sister rubs her eyes. The cat paces the floor and watches the window. The fathers sit near the stove with blankets over their shoulders. The mothers serve bread and broth. No one tastes anything. Their faces show fear. The priest walks house to house. He checks every family. He speaks calm. He places salt on windowsills. He gives each home a candle blessed in the church. When he enters Elias's house, he looks at Ruth's basket. He asks if the wooden horse is safe. She nods. He places a coin on the table. One from the well. The same circle and line carved along the edge. He says every house will keep one coin near the door tonight. He says doors hold against wind, but not against spirits. The fathers agree. They tuck the coin in a small cloth bag and nail it above the frame. The priest leaves. When the door closes, the mothers sit still and breathe out. Elias tells them he wants to see the river. Ruth agrees. The mothers refuse. Elias's father steps in. He says the storm rests for now. He says the children will go, but stay near the square. The mothers agree with heavy eyes. Elias and Ruth pull on boots and coats. Snow reaches their knees. They walk slow to the river. Smoke rises from the hut. The mother stands near the water, stirring a pot on a small stove. The boy plays with the wooden horse. The mother smiles, but her eyes look hollow. She notices Ruth's basket. She asks if the voice called again in the night. Ruth says no. The mother presses her hand to her heart. She whispers thanks. Elias asks if the father ever called from the woods again. The mother says she heard nothing, but she still leaves a plate of bread by the shed every dusk. She says the storm takes food before it takes people. Elias and Ruth sit in the snow while the mother pours warm soup into small cups. The boy shares a piece of cheese. They eat in silence. The river flows under thin ice. The water looks black and still. A shape moves near the trees, low and quick. The mother grabs her son and pulls him inside. Elias and Ruth stand. They hold each other's arms. The shape vanishes. Snow settles. The trees sway. No sound follows. They hurry back to town. The square grows crowded again. The caretaker rings a small bell. He calls everyone near the church. The priest opens the door. He holds his book close. The caretaker says he found fresh marks near the graveyard. More circles, more lines, rows of them carved into the ground. He covered them with snow. The priest says they must protect the graves tonight. He asks for volunteers. Men step forward. Ilias's father and Ruth's father join. Even the butcher and blacksmiths step in. They gather lanterns, nails, and salt. The priest gives each a coin from the wooden box. They tie the coins on strings and wear them around their necks. Mrs. Pike stands apart from the crowd. She mutters and throws ash over her shoulder. She says nothing stops the storm. She says the earth wants what the living refuse to give. People ignore her. They follow the priest back into the churchyard. They pile snow against the fence. They hammer boards over weak spots. They set lanterns on posts. While the men work, Elias and Ruth walk to the well. Snow lies thick around the stones. The rope hangs frozen. The wooden bucket rests on its side. Elias steps close and peers down. Dark water waits far below. Ruth picks up a stone and tosses it in. It hits the water with a faint splash. Silence follows. Then a small ripple touches the walls. Elias grabs Ruth's hand. They step back. They hear soft footsteps behind them. The caretaker stands there with a lantern. He tells them to stay away from the well. He says it eats warmth and gives back cold. He pushes snow over the stones. He sprinkles salt. He leaves without another word. Elias and Ruth go home. The mothers heat water for tea. They wash the cat with a warm cloth. They bandage a small cut on the sister's finger. They care for small things because they cannot control the storm. Night falls early. The sky turns black before anyone lights lanterns. Snow moves sideways in the wind. The fathers leave for the watch. The mothers lock the doors. The sister sleeps near the stove. The cat curls near her feet. Elias and Ruth sit on a blanket. They watch the candle flame bend with each gust. They hear faint shouts outside. Lanterns pass by the window. Men speak low. Dogs whine. Hours pass. Sleep never comes. The mothers sip tea. Their hands shake. Elias holds the charm. Ruth holds her basket. The wooden horse stays hidden inside. Then a sound. A scrape on the roof. Light at first. Then heavier. Snowslides. A long creak. Elias stares upward. Ruth grabs his arm. Another sound. A voice, low, slow, calling a name. Not a name in the house. A different name. A name no one speaks. The mothers cover the sisters' ears. The cat hisses. The fathers return fast. They bolt the door. The priest enters behind them. His face looks pale. He holds a dripping lantern. He says something moved in the graveyard. Something tall. Something thin. It took the snow down with every step. The men chased it, but lost its tracks near the river. Elias feels a chill down his neck. Ruth bites her lip. The priest leans near the door and listens. Wind pushes against the wood. Snow taps the glass. Then silence. Minutes stretch. The priest bows his head. He asks the fathers to keep watch inside. He will guard the church alone. The fathers protest, but he insists. He leaves through the back door and walks into the night. Elias and Ruth press to the window. They see the priest's lantern swing like a small star in the wind. He moves toward the church steps. Snow covers him fast. The mothers tell the children to sleep. They lie on the bench near the stove. The cat curls in a ball. Elias and Ruth pretend to sleep, but keep eyes open. Hours pass. The candle burns low. The fathers stay awake. The storm weakens. Snowflakes drift instead of strike. The mothers breathe again. At dawn, Elias slips outside. Ruth follows. The fathers let them go. The square looks quiet. Snow reaches the waist of anyone who tries to walk. A single path winds toward the church. They follow the path. They reach the church steps. The priest's lantern still burns, but weak. The door stands open, a crack. Snow drifts inside. Elias pushes it wider. They step in. Inside, candles still glow. The room looks calm. The caretaker sleeps on a pew. The wooden box sits on the altar. Coins inside shine in the light. The priest lies on the floor near the front pew. Snow covers his coat. His hat lies beside him. He breathes, but slow. Elias calls his father. Men rush in. They lift the priest and carry him to the stove. They feed him warm broth. He wakes with wide eyes. He grips Elias's wrist. He says the graveyard opened. He saw a figure move between stones. He followed it. It turned and watched him. It had no face, only holes where eyes should be. Then he fainted. The church fills with frightened voices. Mrs. Pike arrives and says the storm will take more before sunrise. The priest begs her to leave. She smiles, then walks out. The men decide the priest will not guard alone again. They stay in the church for the day. Children curl in pews. The mothers bring blankets and bread. The sister sits on the floor and plays with a spoon. The cat sleeps under the altar. Elias and Ruth help sweep the floor. They refill oil in lanterns. They bring snow in buckets to melt. No one leaves the churchyard. The town huddles together. At noon, the caretaker clears the path to the graveyard. He finds deep lines carved in the snow, circles, straight strokes. He covers them with fresh drifts. The priest watches him from the doorway. His face looks haunted. He tells the children to stay close. He says the storm does not tire. When evening comes, the men prepare for another watch. They refuse to walk alone. They pair up and carry ropes to link themselves. They hang bells from their belts so others hear them in the storm. The priest gives Ruth a new charm, a small iron ring tied to string. He gives Elias a candle with a mark carved in the wax. He says light fights darkness. He says fire remembers what snow forgets. They return home. The mothers cook stew. The fathers rest before their shift. The sister hums a small tune and braids the cat's tail with a ribbon. The cat spits and runs under the bed. Elias and Ruth sit by the stove. They whisper about the face with holes. They wonder if it lives in the woods or under the snow. They wonder if it follows them. They wonder why it waits. Night drops fast. The watch leaves. The mothers lock the doors again. The fathers stand at the window. The storm returns harder than before. Snow hits the shutters like fists. Ice shatters against the roof. The first knock comes before midnight, slow, measured. The fathers grip axes. The mothers hold the children. The priest's candle flame shakes. The wooden horse falls off the table. The cat hisses. The knock again. Then another sound. A whisper, close to the window. A child's voice, soft, calling Ilias's name. Ilias's heart stops. Ruth grabs him. The mothers squeeze, the children close. The fathers shout at the voice to leave. The voice stops. The wind screams. A loud crack shakes the roof. Snow pours inside through a gap. The fathers climb to the attic with tools. They hammer boards and push snow back out. The mothers throw salt on the floor. They hang iron nails from the door. Elias lights the priest's candle. Ruth places the wooden horse on the stove to keep it warm. The storm does not rest. It throws claws at the shutters. It shoves ice under the door. It moans like a sorrowful choir. The town shivers under its weight. Nothing enters. No one leaves. Morning stays far away. Morning looks pale, tired and thin. The storm pulls back, but leaves small drifts like white waves along every wall. The fathers push the door open with shoulders and boots. Snow spills inside. The mothers sweep it away with old brooms. Elias and Ruth step out and breathe sharp cold air. Their breath hangs like smoke. The square lies silent. No voices, no footsteps, only wind sliding across ice. The priest stands near the church steps again. He holds his book tight. His coat looks stiff with frozen snow. The caretaker stands beside him, eyes low, shovel in hand. People join them, men, women, children wrapped in shawls. Everyone moves slow. Everyone watches shadows. The priest clears his throat. He says the storm claimed something in the night. He points toward the butcher's shop. The butcher's door hangs open. Snow piles inside. The sign on the door swings on one nail. Elias and Ruth hurry with their parents. The priest follows. Inside, meat hangs frozen from hooks. The counter lies covered in ice. The butcher is gone. The fathers call his name. No answer. The priest finds a trail of footprints in the snow behind the shop. One set of prints, heavy, wide. They lead toward the river path. The footprints vanish near the trees. Nothing else. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No trail. The town stands in the snow. The priest orders the men to search. The mothers lead the children back. Elias and Ruth do not move. They stare at the empty shop. The butcher's apron lies on the floor, covered in frost. Whispers spread. Mrs. Pike walks into the square and holds a bundle of sticks. She lays them on the ground. She pours ash over them. She says the butcher fed the town, so something fed on him. People look away. The priest faces her, his voice low. He says they will find him. She shakes her head and walks away. Elias and Ruth visit the hut by the river again. The mother answers the door with red eyes. She says she heard footsteps last night, heavy, slow. She barred the door and lit every candle. Nothing broke through, but she felt eyes watching. The boy holds the wooden horse tight to his chest. He says the horse scared the voice away. He says he heard whispering from the trees. He shut his ears until it stopped. Elias and Ruth promise to return later. They walk back toward town. Snow crunches under their boots. The sky darkens again. Clouds build fast, heavy and low. The priest gathers the townsfolk inside the church. They light candles along every wall. The caretaker closes the doors. The priest walks to the altar and places the wooden box in front of everyone. He opens the lid. The coins glow in the candlelight. He says someone must have buried this box long ago. He says storms do not dig up treasure without reason. He lifts one coin and tosses it on the floor. It spins, then stops on the mark side. People gasp. The priest kneels beside the coin. His voice shakes for the first time. He says they must return the coins to the well before nightfall. He says the storm wants balance. He says the well held something once, buried deep. Men step forward. They agree. They take the coins in sacks. The priest leads them to the well. Elias and Ruth follow with their parents. The mothers carry lanterns. The fathers carry rope and shovels. Snow thickens. Wind pushes against their coats. They reach the well. The priest opens the sack and drops coins into the darkness. One by one, each coin clinks against stone. The last coin falls silent. The well breathes cold air up into their faces. The priest drops salt into the well next. The caretaker holds the rope. Together they lower a lantern down. The flame burns small but bright. Then the rope jerks. Something pulls hard. The lantern shakes. A sound rises from below. Not a voice, not wind. Something between men pull the rope fast. The lantern comes up dripping water and ash. The flame dies. Smoke rises. The priest steps back. He orders everyone to leave the well alone. People hurry away. Snow swirls around them. Ruth grips Elias's hand. The charm in his pocket feels hot. Back inside the church, the priest tells everyone to return home and stay with family. He says the watch will not leave the square tonight. They will not split. They will not chase shadows. Families gather supplies, blankets, water, bread, lantern oil. Children cry from fear and cold. Men try to calm them. Women whisper names of lost friends. Elias and Ruth return home with their families. The fathers lock the door and bar it with a beam. The mothers make hot soup. The sister warms her hands near the stove. The cat curls under the table. When night falls again, the wind starts soft, then grows sharp. Snow hits the shutters with steady force. The candle flame bends and straightens again. The fathers stand near the door. The mothers sit with the children. A slow thump sounds on the roof. Then another. Something heavy lands. Ice slides down the beams. Boards creak. The cat hisses. The sister hides behind her mother. The wind rises and screams across the chimney. A sharp crack echoes from the attic. The fathers climb the ladder. Elias and Ruth follow. The mothers shout for them to stay, but they climb anyway. The attic lies dark. Snow pushes through a small gap near the roof. The fathers shine lanterns. Something presses on the roof from above. Wood splinters. Snow pours in dot. Ruth sees a mark carved on a beam. A circle and line. Fresh, new. Elias steps closer. The mark glows faint under lantern light. The father's hammer boards over the gap. The attic holds. They climb down. The storm grows stronger. The house shakes under the wind. Dishes rattle on shelves. The windows tremble in their frames. Then a voice, clear, cold, calling again, calling a name. The butcher's name, then the caretaker's name, then a child's name. Every name comes from the wind. Every name rings through the house like a whisper from under the floor. The mothers hold the children close. Elias and Ruth shake. The fathers shout for silence. The wind only grows louder. After hours of fear, the storm stops. Silence drops over the town like a heavy blanket. The wind rests. Snowdrifts fall straight again. The fathers unbolt the door. They step outside. No tracks, no shapes, no voices, only snow. Morning creeps in slow and dim. The church bell rings once. Then again, people gather, their faces pale and drawn. The priest stands on the steps. He says one more night waits, one more storm. He says they must end it tonight. He tells the crowd to bring the wooden box to the graveyard. He says something buried must be returned. He asks for volunteers. Men step forward. Elias's father, Ruth's father, the blacksmith, the carpenter, even the farmer from Old Lane. Elias and Ruth step forward to. The priest tells them no. They refuse to step back. The priest sees the charm in Elias's hand. He sees the wooden horse in Ruth's basket. He nods once. He says they will stand near him, but not alone. The town prepares for night. Fires burn along the square. Lanterns hang from poles. Salt circles the graves. Iron nails mark the fence. The children sleep in the church under blankets. The mothers guard them. The fathers sharpen axes. The priest places the wooden box on a sled. Elias and Ruth stand beside him. The caretaker holds a lantern and leads the way. Night falls fast. Snow thickens. The wind rises. The procession moves toward the graveyard. Slow, silent, careful. When they reach the graveyard gates, the priest orders everyone inside. Lantern light trembles on the stones. The sled sits near a large cross. The priest kneels and opens the wooden box. Coins shimmer in the light. He takes the charm from Elias's hand. He takes the wooden horse from Ruth's basket. He places both inside the box. He whispers a prayer. Something stirs in the dark. Snow shifts. A long shadow crosses the stones. Elias hears footsteps, slow, heavy. The lanterns sway. The wind stops. The ground under the priest's knees trembles. A low groan rises from below. The caretaker steps back. The fathers raise their axes. The earth shakes under the priest's knees. The box rattles. Coins clink against each other. The children's charms tap the wooden sides like teeth. Snow falls from branches. Lantern flames bend low. Elias grabs Ruth's hand. Ruth squeezes hard. The fathers step closer to the priest. The caretaker raises his lantern high. The glow spreads across the gravestones. Carved angels stare with frozen eyes. Names scraped into stone look older than they should. Some graves lean as if something pushed from below. The priest places his palm on the box. He whispers one word. The ground settles. The wind holds its breath. For a second, the graveyard feels empty. The snow floats in slow silence. Then the ground cracks. A deep line splits the snow between graves. It stretches toward the priest. Earth pushes upward. Ice snaps. The fathers step back. The caretaker trips and drops the lantern. It rolls across the snow and strikes a stone. The flame flickers but holds Dot from the cracked ground. A hand rises. No flesh, only bone. Fingers curl and scrape at the air. Another hand follows. Then an arm. The body climbs out of the split. It stands tall, too tall. Bones covered in patches of frozen cloth. A skull stares at them, holes where eyes should be. Snow sits in its mouth. It breathes no air, yet the wind moves around it. The priest grips the box tighter. Elias and Ruth shake, but stay by his side. The fathers step forward with axes. They spread across the graveyard, boots sliding on snow. The creature takes slow steps toward the box. Its feet leave deep prints. With each step, snow melts around its bones. The priest lifts the box and backs away. He orders everyone to form a line. The fathers stand shoulder to shoulder. The caretaker pulls a rusted shovel from the snow. He grips it like a sword. The creature stops. It tilts its skull. It lifts one long arm. It points to the box. Then it points to the well. Elias understands. He whispers to the priest. The priest nods. He shouts for everyone to move. The procession turns. They drag the sled back toward the gate. The creature follows. Slow but steady, silent and patient. Men run ahead to warn the town. The mothers in the church wake the children and herd them behind the doors. They bar each entrance. They dim the lanterns. They wait in the square. The fires burn high. Snow melts in wide rings around each flame. The procession pushes through. The men with axes stand on either side. They position themselves near the well. The priest lifts the box and sets it on the stones. The crowd forms a circle. Elias and Ruth stand near the sled. The caretaker rings a small bell. The sound echoes across the rooftops. The creature enters the square. It steps into the light. People gasp. Some scream. Some fall to their knees. The skull stares at the box. Snow hisses on its bones. The priest speaks loud. He says the coins belong to the well. He says the storm holds them hostage. He says one life will pay the debt if the coins stay above ground. He opens the box and lifts one coin high. The creature stands still. The priest drops the coin into the well. It falls. The well breathes cold air. Snow swirls around the stones. He drops another coin. Another breath. Another gust. He drops the third. The wind roars. The creature steps forward. The fathers raise axes. The creature stops. The priest drops coins faster. One after another. The well roars with each drop. The ground trembles. Snow slides from rooftops. Elias grabs the charm from the box. Ruth pulls the wooden horse. The priest hesitates. He looks at the children. He asks what they feel. Elias says the charm wants to return home. Ruth says the horse wants the same. The priest nods. He drops the charm into the well. A loud crack echoes under the ground. He drops the wooden horse. The well exhales like a dying breath. The creature lowers its head and steps backward. It stands still. The wind rises again. The priest reaches for the last coin, the largest, the one found first. He holds it above the well. The creature raises one hand. It points at Elias, then at Ruth, then at the coin. Elias steps forward. Ruth follows. They take the coin from the priest. They hold it together. The metal burns their hands, but they do not drop it. They lift it over the well. The creature watches. Snow falls from its shoulders. Its skull tilts. Elias and Ruth drop the coin. Silence, deep and sudden. No wind. No storm. No sound at all. The fires go still. Smoke hangs in the air without moving. The world holds its breath. Then the well screams. A long, hollow sound rises from below. The coins explode upward in a burst of white light. The fathers shield their eyes. The mothers cover the children's faces. Elias and Ruth hold each other. Light pours from the well. It floods the square. It glows through snow. It reaches the rooftops. It blinds the night. The creature stands in the center of the light. Its bones shake. The cloth on its limbs turns to ash. The skull cracks. Snow melts around its feet. It falls to its knees, then slowly crumbles into dust. The light fades. Snow settles. The fires flicker back to life. People breathe again. The priest walks to the well and peers inside. The coins are gone. The charm is gone. The horse is gone. Only water remains, clear and still. The creature's dust lies in a small circle near the stones. The caretaker scoops it with his shovel and tosses it into the flames. The fire hisses, then burns brighter. People cry. Some fall to their knees. Others hug each other. The children cling to their mothers. The fathers lower their axes. The priest sinks to the stones and rests. Elias and Ruth stand in the snow. Their hands shake, but their faces stay calm. The town surrounds them. Voices whisper grateful words. Some touch their shoulders. Some kiss their heads. Some say nothing at all. The priest rises. He says the storm is broken. He says the night no longer owns the town. He says the dead return to rest. He says the well holds peace. Lanterns rise across the square. Fires burn warm and steady. The night sky clears. Stars appear. The moon shines silver on the snow. Families return home. They sweep out snow. They lay dry blankets on beds. They sit by stoves and warm their hands. They eat bread and drink tea. They cry from relief. They fall asleep for the first time without fear. Elias and Ruth return home to their parents embrace them. The sister runs into their arms. The cat rubs its head against their legs. They eat stew and bread. They wash their faces in warm water. They sit by the stove until their eyes close. Their mother carries them to bed. She kisses their heads. She whispers thanks to the silent night. Dawn arrives, gentle and bright. Sunlight touches the snow and turns it gold. Icicles drip water onto the stones. The square hums with quiet voices. People sweep paths. Children play in the snow again. Dogs run free. The fathers repair fences. The mothers wash laundry. Peace returns. The priest stands by the well and smiles. The caretaker sits on the church steps, feeding crumbs to birds. Mrs. Pike sweeps her doorstep and hums a soft tune. The farmer from Old Lane brings bread to the blacksmith. The mother from the hut smiles and waves. The boy holds a small wooden figure, a new horse carved by his father. He shows it to Ruth. She smiles and pats his head. Elias tosses a snowball into the air. It lands in a bank and disappears. The storm left scars, empty chairs in some homes, broken windows, cold memories, but the town survived. The children breathe easy again. Elias and Ruth sit on a bench near the square. They watch townsfolk carry on. The sun warms their faces. The snow shines bright. The world feels new. Ruth asks if the creature will return. Elias shakes his head. He feels the air calm. He hears birds. He sees life move again. He says the night lost. The priest rings the church bell, once, twice, not for warning. For hope, people stop and listen. Then they smile. The sound echoes through the streets, through the fields, toward the river, toward the woods. Night falls again, but soft. Lanterns glow in windows. Fires burn low. People sleep without fear. Snow falls gentle and quiet. Elias and Ruth dream of spring. Spring does not rush. It arrives slow. Snow thins day by day. The river breaks its ice. Fields show small patches of brown earth. The sun climbs higher. The cold grows lighter. Smoke smells like wood, not fear. Elias and Ruth stand near the well. They watch the water ripple in soft wind. The wooden box is gone. The coins are gone. The charm and wooden horse are gone. Only clear water remains. The priest says the well sleeps now. The caretaker pats the stones around it. He says the storm left marks, but time will smooth them out. He leans on his shovel and smiles. He looks stronger than before. The butcher returns. People cheer when they see him. He stands in the square wearing a thick coat. His cheeks look thin, but his smile is wide. He says he woke in the woods near Old Lane. He remembers nothing. He froze half to death. The men carried him home. No one asks how he survived. They hug him and bring him stew instead. The church repairs its broken windows. The glass glows, blue, red, and gold in the morning sun. Children point at the colors on the floor. The priest stands behind them and laughs. The mother from the hut walks through the square without fear. Her boy runs ahead and plays with the other children. He holds a new wooden horse carved from clean pine. He lets Ruth hold it. She smiles. Elias plays with the cat, which now chases birds in short bursts before curling up under the stove. The sister runs with a stick in her hand, stirring snow. The mothers wash clothes in melted water. The fathers repair the barn roofs. Some people still talk in whispers about the storm. They remember voices in the wind. They remember the graveyard and the broken coffin. They remember the burning of the dust. But each day the memories fade a little more. One evening the priest gathers everyone in the square. Lanterns hang from poles in a circle. Fires burn in the center. Children sit on blankets. Adults stand behind them. Elias and Ruth sit near the priest. He speaks in a clear voice. He says the storm taught them to hold each other close. He says fear broke houses, but hope rebuilt them. He says the dead rest now and the living breathe again. He says they lost friends, but they honor them by living without shadows. The people bow their heads. They do not sing. They sit in silence together, cold enough to see breath, warm enough to feel safe. After a while, the priest tells stories of old winters, times when wolves roamed the edges of town, times when fire saved whole streets, times when children were born on the coldest nights and grew strong. He tells a story of a girl who carried a lantern through a storm and found her lost brother. He tells a story of a boy who tied bells to the church to call the town back from fear. He tells a story of a well that once held coins, then let them go. Elias and Ruth listen. They close their eyes and hear the crackle of fire and soft breathing of neighbors. They feel safe. When the gathering ends, people walk home together. Lanterns swing. Footsteps crunch on old snow. The moon hangs full and bright. No voice calls from the woods. No shadow lingers behind houses. The night stays quiet. Days grow longer. Snow melts faster. Grass rises from the thaw. Birds return. Children run without coats. Mothers hang clothes outside. Fathers till soil. Life moves forward. Elias and Ruth visit the graveyard one morning. They stand near the grave that once opened. Now it lies sealed with stones and iron nails. Snow sits soft across it. Elias touches the top stone. Ruth lays a small branch of green leaves on the mound. They stand still for a moment, then walk away. They go to Old Lane. The farmer feeds his cows. He waves when he sees them. He gives them warm bread and sweet milk. He says the storm taught him patience. He says the marks on the barn have faded. He paints new boards over old ones. Elias and Ruth leave and walk to the river. The hut door stands open. The mother kneads dough. The boy skips rocks across the water. The sun shines on the surface. The river looks warm and alive. They sit with the boy and throw stones into the flow. The stones splash and sink. Water swirls. The boy laughs. The mother hums. Everything feels simple. By summer, green covers every field. The town celebrates the harvest. Tables fill with bread, apples, cheese, and soup. Children run between stalls. Someone plays a fiddle. People dance. Elias and Ruth sit by the well again. They share apples. They talk about winter nights. They talk about school and chores. They talk about the boy from the hut and his wooden horse. They talk about next year. The priest stops beside them. He rests a hand on their shoulders. He thanks them again. He says to children saved a whole town with courage and warm hearts. He says their names will live in quiet stories. Elias shrugs. Ruth smiles. They did what they knew was right. They want no praise. They want peace. As night falls, fireflies drift between the trees. The square glows with lanterns. Music plays. Laughter spreads. People dance in circles. Some hold warm cups of cider. Some sit on benches and talk. Some hold hands and watch the stars. The priest sits on the church steps with the caretaker. They drink hot tea and share bread. They talk about the well. The caretaker says it looks deeper now. The priest says the coins rest where they belong. Elias and Ruth lie on a blanket in the grass. The cat curls between them. The sister sleeps on their mother's lap. Their father tells a joke to the blacksmith. The blacksmith laughs so loud the birds fly from the trees. No storm comes. No voice calls. No shadows reach across the ground. Only music, warm night air, and soft joy. When the moon rises high, the families head home. The cat rides on Elias's shoulder. The lantern light flickers along the path. The smell of bread and smoke follows them. They reach home. They close the door. They light a candle. They sleep in soft silence. Years pass. The children grow. The town changes. New houses rise. Old houses fall. People come and go. But stories stay. Stories of a winter worse than any before. Stories of a storm with no face. Stories of two children who held their nerve and gave a town a future. Some nights, old folks sit by the fire and retell the tale. They speak of coins and charms. They speak of a well that once glowed like a star. They speak of footsteps in the snow and voices in the wind. But always the story ends the same. The town survived. The night broke. Spring followed, Elias and Ruth grow older. They stay in the same town. They keep close. They help neighbors. They teach children to respect the well. They tell them to believe in hope, not fear. One final winter arrives long after. Snow falls, but brings no voices. The town sleeps without dread. Fires burn bright. Bread bakes warm. The well stays silent. On a clear night, a soft wind passes through the square. Lanterns sway. Leaves rustle. People wake the next morning and find a small wooden horse sitting on the well. Clean pine. Smooth shape. New. Elias and Ruth walk to the square. They lift the horse. They smile. They take it home and place it on the shelf. The cat rubs against it. The sister, now grown, laughs and presses her hand to her heart. No one knows who carved it. No one cares. It reminds them of peace. It reminds them of kindness. It reminds them winter ends. Thank you for resting with this quiet story. The next time you feel cold wind against your window, think of the fires that people keep for each other. If you enjoyed this calm walk through old snow, I linked a free sleep booklet for gentle nights. Rest now. Another story waits in the next video. Image prompt.